Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jim Cornette Experience. Today, we're going to talk about an irresistible force, Gorilla Monsoon, and an immovable object, AEW's ratings. All that and so much more joyous talk. And joining me in all this, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's the irresistible force of podcasting, and here he blows. Be great, Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again. Swami's Pappy, or whatever you used to call me. Another action-packed week. Some great wrestling history talk, and the listeners have really been loving that lately. And, of course, the contemporary thrashing that they have all become so used to, where we have no choice but to, I guess, say the truth.
Yes. Well, there's choices. Other people have no problems lying out their assholes.
I saw someone say, and I don't want to do Dynamite now, but they said, man, Dynamite did a really good job of following up on stuff from the pay-per-view. And I'm like, that Wardlow follow-up? That was a good follow-up? Him just walking out there with Don Callis and standing there? But whatever, we'll get to Dynamite later.
Well, we're going to follow up on all kinds of things, but it's ragweed season down here, Brian. I got the squishy in my ear, and I'm croupy and drippy. But I'm going to try to have the energy. I'm setting the bar low, the expectation, lowered expectations at the top of the program so that I can exceed whatever meager standard I've set for myself. But right at the top, I want to wish happy birthday to the Queen of Castle Cornette. Stacy's birthday is today as we sit here and speak.
Some festival music?
What kind of festivals do you go to?
For Stacy, I'm sure she would appreciate it. She actually likes good music, unlike you.
Anyway, as we sit here and speak, the people may not hear it for a couple of days, but it's her birthday today, so I want to make sure to acknowledge that. And you can send her, whenever you hear this, you can send her greetings or well wishes, posthumously, I guess. Posthumously would not help her any. Belatedly is the word I was trying to say. A belated fashion. Not trying to tip off anything that may happen over the weekend here.
Hey.
But anyway, nevertheless, an update from what I said a couple of days ago. I said that the thank you, fuck you, buy t-shirts were on sale half price on clearance because we're making room for new stuff that's coming. And at the time, I didn't know that they were pretty much sold out. So a lot of people may have got pissed off. But there are 12 small thank you, fuck you, buy t-shirts. If you want to get some for the kids, there are 12 smalls still available at half price. What is that? $13 or whatever at jimcornette.com. And then we're going to have the big announcement next week about the holiday sale and what all that's going to entail, including a brand new coveted item that everybody's going to want to have before their lives are over. Don't give them any more hints, Brian. What would you like to have before your life is over?
I don't know. I'm having such a good time right now. A giant library of my very own.
Well, I hear that some cities may have their fucking municipal libraries and things like that on sale cheap with the way things are going these days. You might investigate it. Maybe Des Moines has a good library you could pick up for half price.
I'm not going to Iowa, I'll tell you that.
You know what I'd like before I'm done? Some peace and fucking quiet.
Good luck.
That's what but the rest of the world will not cooperate with that. Right here in the cocoon, in the bubble over here, it's all right. But when you evade the perimeter, it gets louder. Did you hear the big news, Brian?
Oh, it was massive. The biggest news I've ever heard.
The big news that Jeff Jarrett's former babysitter has gotten engaged. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't escape this nonsense. Yeah, I've heard about it.
Well, I thought, and the only reason I don't know anything about, I've seen Taylor Swift pose for pictures on video. Yeah. I don't know. Why do they show the people, the celebrities, in front of a logo background and it's a video camera and they're posing. Fuck it. And besides that, even the still cameras, they have the shutter speeds of 1/1000th of a hair. In this digital world, you can't take a bad picture now. Back in my day, we used to have to work at it. Why are they just standing there posing? Can't they just move about normally and you take a picture of them the way it comes? That's a question to you, Brian.
I don't even
what
understand what you're asking.
This?
What is this? This is your takeaway from the Taylor Swift engagement announcement?
Well, no, it just came to my mind that the only thing I know about Taylor Swift is that she walks out on these fucking red carpets and poses for people. I don't know what she sings. I don't know what she writes. And I know she's engaged to a football player of some description. But the one thing I do know about her, it was funny, and somebody retweeted that the other day, is that she was Jeff Jarrett's babysitter like 20 years ago or whatever. Because Jeff lived in Hendersonville, and apparently, you know, that's where all the country music stars used to live back in my day. So apparently that's still a tradition. She was a aspiring country musician or whatever that lived in Hendersonville.
Like most talent, her career really took off once she stopped working for the Jarretts.
How? Oh! I wish your sound filter hadn't goddamn... He filtered out all of my sound effects. I can't play no more. I would have played some kind of goddamn screaming. Hold on. What? Didn't it something used to scream? Yeah. Does that work?
That worked. I heard the big scream.
Well, there you go. But anyway,
like Taylor Swift leaving the Jarrett estate that one fateful day. What did she see that made her run out in fear? And write songs, endless amounts of songs.
But think about this. Think about this now. Taylor Swift was Jeff Jarrett's babysitter, and
for his kids, she didn't babysit Jeff Jarrett.
Well, he paid her. He didn't make the kids pay. No, he didn't make those kids pay for their own babysitters until they were like 12. So technically, she was his babysitter. But Taylor Swift and Jeff Jarrett's babysitter, and Sputnik Monroe's son was Jerry Jarrett's limo driver. You never know who you're going to fucking run into that's going to...
And was it Jerry Jarrett he lived, was it across the lake from Johnny Cash or next to Johnny Cash? What was it?
That's before he built the big place. When he built the big place, he didn't live near anybody. He was on 100 acres of a fucking mountain with a goddamn 18,000 square foot house with a... No, that may have just been the ballroom. No, I think it was 18,000 square feet all in total with gold fixtures in the goddamn bathrooms. When he lived on Old Hickory Lake, he had a house. It was across the lake from Johnny Cash's place that I got to see all those years later when I took Rick Rubin over there and had lunch there. And he was next door to Bobby Bear. And no, he was next door to the house that George Jones and Tammy Wynette lived in briefly. I don't know which one kept it. And down the street from Bobby Bear.
Apparently that George Jones house just dripped liquor. The walls, you touched them and liquor would spill right out.
You remember the song that Jimmy Hart thought he could actually have a hit with at one point?
Which?
Tammy, why not give George another chance?
You know, that's actually one of those Jimmy Hart songs I don't know.
I don't know if he ever actually recorded it, but he sang me some lyrics one time in the locker room, and it was hilarious. We got to put Mark James or somebody in Memphis on that to find out if Jimmy ever committed that to...
Hey, I wrote a song about Barbra Streisand's nose and George Jones and Tammy Wynette. What other celebrities was he writing songs about?
He had high hopes for We Hate School, and it did get played on the radio in Memphis. And also, I was at a radio station appearance with him in Memphis when they did play Barbra Streisand's Nose at least once.
Which was later remade into Lance Russell's Nose.
Well, actually, no, it was... Lance Russell's Nose was first, and then he changed it because he thought he could get it on the chart. See, he was trying. And We Hate School was probably the closest shot he might have had because it was very Rick Springfield-y.
The problem is with We Hate School, let alone the Terry Funk cover version when he was like 40. But the problem with We Hate School is like the video's awesome. It's like wrestling awesomeness. Coco Beware on guitar. Like, it's ridiculous. But there's no kids. There's no one young. Like Jimmy Hart's the lead singer and he's like 45 at that point or whatever. You needed someone young for that song to really work.
Well, but Jimmy
can't be some 50-year-old guy singing We Hate School.
Like, Jimmy was forever young. See, that's the thing. And look at him now. He looks the same as he did 40 years ago.
Those notorious school haters, Jimmy Hart, Coco Beware, and the Turk.
Yeah. But Jimmy could remember when he hated school, and the 45 sold at the matches. He got it played in Memphis, I think, probably in Jackson, and
the answer song to Rick Springfield, "Eat Your Heart Out, Rick Springfield."
Eat your heart out, Rick Springfield, 'cause she's my girl and she always will be the only girl for me. Ain't no rock and roll singer gonna take her away from me. How about that?
So that means that's pretty good. That was spot on. So that means Jimmy Hart in the song, his girlfriend is Jesse's girl. He's Jesse.
Well,
because he says, doesn't he like improv again? Like, Jesse girl's my girl. Like, doesn't he say that?
But see, that's the thing. You can interpret it any way you want. That's the good thing about deep songwriting. You know, interpreting the song. What did the Beatles mean?
I got a song now. Jude? I'm going to answer Kaja Gugu. I'm not shy. It's my new song.
And I have a test.
Flock of Seagulls. I got a song for you. It's called "I Walk Slow."
I have a test pressing of Jimmy Hart singing "Son of a Gypsy," which was Jimmy Valiant's entrance music. That actually got played in heavy rotation on. I was at FM 100 in Memphis, whatever.
Smokey Johnson, yeah.
There you go. But Jimmy Hart's, because Jimmy Hart wrote it, right? So Jimmy's version was the Ballad of Handsome Jimmy, and he did the test press, and then Jimmy Valiant recorded his version and what he did with it, or possibly what he did to it, depending on your point of view, and then. They sold, I know, in the thousands of the 45s, and it was all over the radio in Memphis for a while there.
Hey, you know, this probably isn't the time, but it probably also may be the only time. I don't have it in front of me. I'm actually looking for it. One of the listeners has been sending in a question to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com. He sent it in a couple times. I've been meaning to ask you about it, but we haven't had a chance about Len Rossi's The Wrestler's Prayer.
Oh, good Lord. You know what? I don't have one of those, and I have seen the lyrics transcribed somewhere over the years in one of my books, but it was, from what I understand, sort of a maudlin type of thing.
Wait, you've never heard it? Really?
No, I've never heard it out loud. I've read the words, and I know that he recorded it.
Hold on, let me see real quick. A little sidetrack.
Is it on the internet somewhere?
I think it may be. Let's see.
Oh, good Lord.
Can I play it from here? Let's see. Oh, this is someone actually filming themselves playing the record.
Oh, good heavens. Well, that's another completely other song.
Oh, Lord. I thought perhaps I might make my reservations now for that big main event in your arena. heard from your promoters that this would be 2 out of 3, but an everlasting time limit. I hear that some of the all-time greats are up there with you now. Men like Gorgeous George, Tarzan Hewitt, Don Cortez, Larry Shane, Ike Eakins, and oh yes, Lord, the one I knew best of all, my partner, Tex Riley. I know that throughout
Let me pause this for a moment. This is your first hearing of this. That's Len Rossi, the wrestler.
Yes.
Singing or speaking there. What are your thoughts initially?
Well, and this was sold for the people going, who are these people? Len Rossi was the top babyface for Nick Goulas in Nashville for years. And he was a straight ahead babyface wrestler in great shape, scientific wrestler, as they used to say, complete opposite of Fargo, who was also a huge babyface, which is why they never liked each other. And Len Rossi never got into Memphis, but Fargo did get into Nashville. Nevertheless, it was made in Nashville, and all those wrestlers that he was referring to were guys that had been big in the Goulas territory over the previous 15 years and had died for one reason or another. So that's where we're at so far. And I can't imagine the thought that anybody would want to take this home and listen to it.
This is from Miracle Records in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Oh, I bet it was.
Let's go back to Len Ross. And it's the same decade as, Son of a Gypsy by Jimmy Valiant, right?
This is like what, I don't know. It could have been the late 60s.
Oh, okay. I thought it was early 70s, but you may know better than me.
It could have been a late. Well, see, he had his car wreck in 1972. So I'm thinking it's late 60s or thereabouts, but it's it's country music because they're all in Nashville. And then at various points over the years, the country music stars and the pro wrestlers in Nashville intersected and their social circles connected. So that's why a lot of the guys, for good and bad, ended up making records and were thinking they could make records, like the guy record company in Bowling Green.
These men will make a big hit with you, just like they did here on Earth. There are a lot of my friends still here with us, Lord, so please take care of them, because someday they will appear in that golden ring of yours. Men like Jackie Fargo, Mario Milano, Joe and Bill Sky, Mr. and Mrs. Corsica Joe, Danny Dusick, Pat Malone, Eddie Graham, Raycon, and oh yes, Lord, Haystack Calhoun.
Let me stop it for a second. Such an interesting list of people he just said.
He put, someday all these people are going to be dead, and he put Fargo at the top of the list.
He said Fargo, Ray Gunkel, Eddie Graham, so obviously two promoters at that period of time.
Well, but here's the thing, that places it even better, because those were the guys that had been in the recent past the top baby faces in the Tennessee territory, and in the case of Danny Dusick and Pat Malone, beloved figures in the office, behind the scenes, and etc. So someday they'll call them up. But so that's Gunkel. The Gunkel got called up in 72. So I think this is late 60s off the top of my head.
Yeah, what bad luck this
some of
record
those names.
Was. The same year, 72, he goes off the road and Gunkel dies.
Eddie Graham was in and out of the Tennessee territory when he was first establishing Florida, and really trying to establish relationships, because he not only worked Georgia, but also he worked Tennessee for Goulas Welch, and then later on had a close relationship with Jerry Jarrett to send him guys from Florida. So all those names were people, again, that the territory fans would know at that time.
Mario Milano had just been there, or maybe he was still there when this came out. He was a major star.
Yes, and he and Jackie Fargo and Mario Milano, they were a big tag team at the Pfeffer Files. I found Jackie and Don, and we'll talk about this, the Fargos, in a future episode when I have more time to sit down and look at these notes and cross-reference shit. But Jackie and Don were kind of on the outs in like 64, 65. He wrote to Pfeffer and said, use your pull with Buddy Fuller. I want to keep teaming with Mario Milano instead of Don coming back in. Fuck Don. But Fargo and Milano were a popular tag team.
He's pretty big, so please save him some room. I expect many of our fans will be there too, to watch men like Lester Welch, Corey Combs, and Jeanette, and many, many more, in the most beautiful arena of all, your heaven. So you see, Lord, we all know that someday we will receive your call. And oh yes, please, one more request. When a champ, Lou Thez, comes by, please treat him with respect. Because if every man would follow in his footsteps, the world would be a much better place. And after all, Lord, he knows that you're the greatest champ of all. This is Len Rossi, Lord. And in closing, I would like to say, if I may, please, save a dressing room of heavenly splendor for me.
Oh, yeah, don't forget me. It's Len Rossi. Now that I put Thez over, maybe also he'll book me. Oh, my God.
Jim, is there a territory that the wrestlers or the promoters they treated Lou Thez better than Tennessee? Even though he ended up running against Nick Ulis in 76, it seems like they held him in such esteem in that territory.
Well, they did. Part of it was, Nick, as much esteem as Nick ever held anybody in or any of the wrestlers, the world champion was important to them because the NWA was important to Nick. Whereas, I guess what I'm trying to say is Nick, remember I've talked about, he had it plastered all over his interview desk and his TV sets and his newspaper ads and anything. The only sanctioned NWA wrestling, it was a big deal for him to be in that club. Roy, I believe, and maybe later on Jarrett Moore had respect for Thez as a wrestler himself rather than just the representative of the NWA. Because Jarrett always talked about how when he was a kid seeing these matches, Thez always came in a suit with a nice bag. He looked like the champion. He carried himself like the champion. He was a star. And so Jerry, I think, along with probably Roy before, had a soft spot for Thez, not only because he was a shooter, but also because he was a benefit to the business. But Nick, it was more, he probably didn't want to pay Thez the money they had to pay him when he was NWA champion, but he wanted to be part of the club.
And Lord, if you see Lou Thez, just do me a favor, treat him with respect, because he'll stretch you. That's
and you know what? The rib of it all, Cora Combs, she made it another 40 years. She outlasted all of them.
Well, there was the wrestler's prayer. We'll talk more about Memphis music again in the future.
How did what led to that? What happened?
Jimmy Hart, talking about Jimmy Hart songs.
Oh, well, you can't overlook the Memphis music without poo-poo. But speaking of big events, Brian, I heard there was a milestone took place recently in the world of pro wrestling and the world in general. The world now that he's shaped in his own image, it's all gone to shit. Vince McMahon's 80th birthday took place at a big swanky fancy Dan type of location in New York where they had the limousines and things, and people were seen. There were witnesses to the attendees of the birthday party.
Yeah, this became a bit of a story. A lot of listeners were sending over, what does Jim think of this? So why don't we just talk about it now? August 23rd, Vince McMahon apparently threw himself an 80th birthday. I don't know if you call that a gala.
What do you mean he threw it for himself? No, that's sad.
Who else?
Even for a purported head pooper, that's sad that he would have to throw his own birth. Are there no... He's got it's just the daughter, the son, the son-in-law. Can somebody toss Vince a little soiree?
And again, maybe it's not the case. Maybe someone else threw him this really big, expensive party. But
certainly his son and daughter had to be seen there, weren't they?
As of
son-in-law, maybe?
The various lists I've seen that list people who were in attendance, no one has cited Triple H or Stephanie McMahon as being there. No Linda McMahon, obviously. I don't know about Shane. I thought I could have saw something with that, but I don't see it in front of me as I'm looking.
Would anybody have recognized Linda? Or would they have just thought that it was a figure from the wax museum that had gotten overheated?
There's almost like a whole side story you could do of like Vince and Linda as like this international diamond thieves. Like they change their look and they get on planes and they have these different looks every time you see them and they look crazy.
But I thought the idea was when you're trying to change your look so you don't attract attention, that you don't change your look to a look that attracts a lot of fucking attention.
Hey, I saw a video of Vince purportedly leaving the party. And again, it seemed like it was all in the middle of the day. But it was him shuffling, or maybe it was just him leaving a restaurant, and he looked awful. Forget about the shuffle and he can't walk. The hair. It's now obvious it's a purposeful look. I mean, it's a choice. He said, give me the Sputnik Monroe. Give me this giant flash of gray hair in the middle of all this completely black dyed hair. His hair was never that black when he was young. So it's a choice. By the way, choice.
Right here, right now, I have sent you video of the skunk in my backyard chasing the baby deer. And can you admit right now that's the biggest goddamn skunk you've ever seen in your life?
No, I just saw the video of Vince leaving this party or walking out to the street.
I don't mean the two-legged skunks. I mean the four-legged skunk.
That was the biggest skunk I've ever seen. I've never seen a skunk that big. And it chased that deer. And didn't really have to run that hard. The deer just would turn around and flee.
And white from one end to the other. It's like some kind of mutant skunk. But anyway, back to the other mutant skunk.
And we'll see what we can do by getting some footage up with commentary at some point in the future of this amazing backyard battle. But Vince McMahon, 80th birthday party. Of course, he has the company 14th and I. No longer a part of WWE, although still a shareholder. And I believe it's still like just under 5%. May not seem like a lot, but it's a lot. Here are some of the names that we know were at his party. The Undertaker, as well as WWE legend Michelle McCool were at the party.
Well, I'm sure they came as a matched set.
John Cena, who seemingly dresses like Vince now, he was at the party.
What is he wearing? One of the gangster suits with the pinstripes and shit, or what?
Seen reports that JBL, as well as Gerald Briscoe, were at this party in New York City. There is a photo making the rounds in this photo from the party, allegedly. It is Drew McIntyre in a tuxedo, Sheamus, Jerry the King Lawler,
what?
Titus O'Neil, and The Miz and Maurice.
Okay, we'll back up. And I didn't mean to say what, like Jerry Lawler would never lower himself to go to Vince McMahon's party. I didn't know the King was flying all the way to New York for birthday parties these days. Everybody else, and Titus O'Neil, I didn't know, he was on the Vince's inner circle. The others don't really surprised me. Maybe Miz, he's one of the new guys. No wonder he's had the job for so long. He mastered the art of Vince kissing years ago.
And by the way, that photo emerged apparently because Jerry Lawler sent it out on social media, and there's a little tag at the bottom that it was almost like part of the photo. It says 80th. So people are assuming that must be where it's from. I have footage here
Well, but anyway, hold on. I was just going to say that the rest of the guys, especially Gerald Briscoe, he's been around him with him, worked for him for 40 years, and Undertaker and Cena have expressed their, admiration for what he's done for them. So I'm pretty sure they couldn't say, nah, Vince, we ain't going to come to your birthday party, or whoever arranged it.
I'm pretty sure more people than the fans realize talk to Vince McMahon all the fucking time. But here's footage. Someone on Twitter named Danny tweeted out. It is apparently just a van pulling up and people running out of it midday in Manhattan to go to this party. Michael Cole, Booker T, Teddy Long, and Dave Kapoor, aka Ranjan Singh. I think that was like a writer.
I don't know who he is under either of those names, to be honest with you.
I think that's like a writer who became a manager, but I could be wrong. Also,
well, it's nice of Theodore.
Drew McIntyre was quickly getting on the bus in a bad attempt to avoid being seen. Now, again, we're hearing about these names that were there. It doesn't mean that names that we're not hearing weren't there. Again, we brought up Triple H and Stephanie. We haven't heard that they were there. We haven't heard that they weren't there. So they may have snuck in the way some of these people apparently did.
I was about to say, Jiminy, do you want to be, was it like a crush of people waiting to assault all of them if they didn't sneak in because they're such massive celebrities, or were they just not wanting anybody to know they went to Vince's birthday party?
Yeah, I'm not sure. And that's a question I'm going to ask you in a second. But real quick, as a follow-up, because this was apparently in the paper today, McMahon cited for reckless driving, applies for pre-trial program. Stamford, Vince McMahon, the co-founder and former CEO of WWE, applied for a pre-trial probationary program at the arraignment for his reckless driving case Tuesday. McMahon appeared at State Superior Court in Stamford on Tuesday, where he applied for the Accelerated Rehabilitation Program. If granted, McMahon could see the charges against him dismissed. McMahon's court appearance comes after his July arrest. He was arrested? Did we know that?
Well, he was. No, hold on now, cowboy. I think when you're given a citation for whatever the fuck he was, I don't remember the traffic offense, but going too fast, being unsafe, whatever, you are being charged with that. I don't know whether that may be a misprint or some mistake in their reporting. It's technically an arrest, but I don't think he went to jail.
If someone see if there's a mugshot, that's what we need now.
Oh, good
after
heavens.
His
you want to see that
crash.
after you've seen what he looks like when he's presentable?
McMahon's attorney, Mark Sherman, said the application, if granted, could give McMahon the chance to guarantee a complete dismissal of the case, but still allow Vince to convey contrition and concern for the other drivers, which is his top priority. That's a quote. And it goes into the accident report there, and notably the crash occurred just hours before the announcement of Hulk Hogan's death. He was cited for reckless driving and following too closely, resulting in an accident. He was released on a $500 bond. He was arrested.
What? Well. Whoa. Now, how come nobody said that before? Clean out in plain language.
I'm not sure. In an accident report, state police say the crash happened 9:22 a.m. July 24th. They said McMahon was driving his 2024 Bentley Continental. Wow. In the right lane of the Merritt Parkway, also known as Route 15, north in Westport, when he collided with the rear of a 2023 BMW 430, and then with the median guardrail. Police said a 2020 Ford Fusion driving on the south side of the highway hit some debris that had been projected over the center median. They said that vehicle then collided with the guardrail on the northbound side.
Well, I told you two things. I told you this is a shit fucking road, and everybody who responded to our clip on it said the same thing. And that was the person that was allegedly the same name as one of the WWF employees going to work.
McMahon is next scheduled to appear in court on October 16th. So we'll follow up on this story. But the birthday party...
released on bond.
He was on
Nobody
bond
made
when
a
he had his
big
birthday
deal out of-
party.
Well, yeah, but nobody made a big deal out of them. Hey, we're going to take you in there. I would love to see video of that. Can we, anybody request some kind of body camera footage of cops telling Vince McMahon he had to come with them? That would be pay-per-view material.
That's interesting because, I mean, you think about the fact that the cop was following him already, apparently, looking to pull him over. So he was driving like a maniac for a while, and you've talked in the past about his tendency, in the best of times, to drive like a maniac. So he was going to get pulled over. And then this accident happens. He was arrested for, that's the part that's, again, we didn't hear that previously.
I mean, are we just dumb, Brian, and we missed this completely? Or I thought he got ticketed for this stuff and fucking had to go to court and explain himself.
No, he got charged and released on bond. So he was arrested. But back to this arresting issue, this party.
Yes.
What do you think?
What kind of bird don't fly?
Is there any issue in your eyes with people going to a party for Vince McMahon considering the charges that are out there? And again, it involves people that work for the company and possibly even talent. Should talent shun him? Should fans have a problem with people who are around Vince McMahon now? Again, if you have a problem with that, there's a lot of top people in that company talking to him all the time. Some of us think there's certain people sitting near Gorilla who are only there because they're Vince's eyes and ears. What do you think of this? The idea that people have a problem with anyone attending this party?
Well, it's ridiculous because, God damn it, these are people. And again, remember, Titus O'Neil is the one that Vince suspended for some negligible reason. And then they had a hoopla and then they made up. But I didn't know he became like one of the family. Like, there's Titus O'Neil with Willie Gilzenberg and Phil Zacco. But these are people that have worked with him for years, have known him for years, that credit him with a lot of what, if not everything, that they have. And, I'm saying he didn't shit on their head. I'm sorry. Do you feel if someone has been really good to you for a decades period of your life, do you really want to say, no, I won't come to your party when you're 80 years old because you do all kinds of weird shit with other people? I don't think the fans should be mad at him. I don't think that the fans should be particularly celebratory over anybody that didn't go. We don't know who the fuck turned it down or had something else to do that night, but he's still got to have a goddamn birthday party, even if poor thing has to throw it for himself. We don't know that.
We don't know that, but we have not seen any reports that, Barry Diller was seen going to this party and Dick Ebersol, like no big players. It's all just people who would have been around him backstage at the wrestling events a few years ago.
These Hollywood people, it's what have you done for me lately? Now that Vince's face is melting and his voice is gone and his gait is a shuffle and his head looks like a skunk, they don't have any time for him. They used him up, and now Lorne Michaels should have been there. If Lorne Michaels should have been there for all the wonderful things that Vince McMahon did for 11:30 on Saturday nights.
Again, I'm going back to my previous thoughts. He's either going to start a wrestling company or there's nothing to purchase. He's either going to start a wrestling company if he doesn't buy TNA, and I don't think that's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. Or he's going to be back on WWE TV once this Janelle Grant case is settled one way or the other. But he's not disappearing. He's not going quietly until he goes.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean the WWE is going to let him stand up on the stage and growl at people anymore. He's not a pleasant television personality anymore, because not only is he, regardless of what you think of him, even if people still halfway liked Vince, you put him on now, it's a fucking downer for anybody that likes him. Because look at the state of that. And then what purpose would he serve in any positive way? If he wasn't on when Hogan died, then he ain't going to be on. That's my belief.
And again, he was upset that he wasn't invited there, apparently, according to that interview we did with TMZ. But here he is, mingling with not just people that used to work for him, but a lot of people currently doing stuff with WWE. We'll see where this all goes. But Vince McMahon, whether it's getting arrested for crashing his car into some other executive in the morning on the Merit, or having a big birthday spectacular, he certainly is not going away anytime soon.
Well, and one thing that we now know from his own surgically enhanced lips, they didn't invite him. Because he said, oh, I think I should have been there. What? You know, he would have been saying, I couldn't be there if it had been up to him or something like that. He's sore because they didn't invite him. And that tells me they don't plan to have him over for dinner anytime soon. But I could be wrong. But Brian, all the the constant drama in real life today, don't you just wish you could have a daily fantasy to just take you away from these things?
I guess that's a way to look at it, sure.
If you get to just have a daily fantasy, something that could take you away into something you enjoy, like the football's coming up. You heard they're going to do this again this year, Brian. They're playing the football again this year. They keep getting good feedback about it. Maybe you want to have some fantasies about the football, because I would like to direct the folks' attention to our brand new friends at Prize Picks. Because, Brian, you and I, we make decisions every day, and we're right a lot. And we love talking about when we're right and saying, I told you so. But with Prize Picks, being right about things can get you paid, as well as having the satisfaction of being a superior human being. So don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right and a superior human being. They're going to play the football again. What you do is you go to Prize Picks. Well, first you download the app, but everybody knows that these days, Brian, right? The kids know to just, whatever you're looking at, download the app first.
That's right. The kids know this. Everyone knows this. Everyone does this. But you.
Well, we'll see. I'm starting a trend. But they download the app and they go and they say, boom, I'm going to pick that somebody is going to do more or less of something. It's as simple as that. The projections are subject to change week to week, so make sure you check the app for all the latest information, but you can have one of these football players do more of something or less than something. Rushing, passing, pissing, whatever they do. And then when you're right, you get paid. Am I overstating the case, Brian? Am I making it too complicated?
No, I think you're saying it in a very unique way. And of course, what we're talking about is the upcoming, we're talking in English, ladies and gentlemen, here. And we're talking about Prize Picks, the upcoming NFL season. You may think you know what's going to happen. You may think you know so much about football that you have a good idea what's going down this coming Sunday. You go to Prize Picks, you download the app, and you see how good you could do. And of course, Jim, I got Prize Picks on my phone, and I know right now, if you could, you'd be on there just spending money. Well, I probably don't want to say it that way. You'd be on there just having a ball, winning.
Just having a ball.
Winning.
Feeling groovy. Da, 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 da. Because Prize Picks is simple to play. And see, Stacy's got it on her gimmick, even though I don't have her gimmick, because I don't know how to work her gimmick. But she's got it, and we're going to play with it. And Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. It's the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 states. And what stragglers are still behind the times? And Prize Picks, folks, puts their users first, so all the withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And they offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more. And injury reboots. Have you heard about this, Brian? If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't come back, Prize Picks will not count it as a loss. So Either root for them to do what you want them to do or root for some of these son of bitches just get knocked out early. And that way it won't count against you. Just carry them off the field with a fucking spatula. Anyway, right now, folks, if we've whetted your appetite for more mayhem and daily fantasy sport type of activity that could also result in you being paid money for being right, download the app today and use the code JCE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Well, that's 10 times as much, Brian. What kind of Igmo would not want to do this right off the bat? JCE is the code to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. You play that, then you're going to get 50 more, and then you're going to be in the potential lineup yourself. And people will start picking you.
No, let's just talk about
maybe the light's going to be in your eyes, so you're not going to be able to see who's giving you the finger. But they're going to say, it looked like him, and then they'll take you out of that lineup and put you in the fucking paddy wagon.
Oh.
Download the app today.
Oh, Jim, you hear that? It's Antonio Inoki. He's saying, let's let the people know in a professional way.
Yes, download the app today for Prize Picks. Use the code JCE. $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right.
That's right. Welcome back, Prize Picks. Happy to have you back on the show. You know, Jim, this Inoki thing, there's a lot of listeners insisting that the thing he yells is arigato. I don't think it is. Did you hear that?
No, it's awfully drawn out, but see now, it's a wonderful digital audio recording, remastered. No, because of the emphasis or the accent or the drava, as they say, is over the second syllable in what he's saying there rather than arigato.
Yeah, I don't hear it.
Yeah, I ain't getting it.
I still won't play the stupid song.
Would you please stop?
All right. It's not me. It's Pelican Jaw.
All right. Anyway, we got to update the people. And I was hoping to get a different kind of update than what we're getting here. But we want to update the people on Rampage Jackson's delinquent felon son, Raja Jackson.
Well, I don't think you can actually call him a felon. He hasn't been arrested for anything yet.
Well, okay. Then escaped, attempted, wanted felon.
Well,
allegedly.
Well, I maybe should be a felon. Maybe that would work.
How about attempted homicidal mayhem attempter?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Well, whatever the case it may be, this fucking guy, who we're talking about, I was hoping we would have a update like, they've arrested this guy for bashing this other guy's face in and causing all this chaos and uproar and turmoil. Bunch of these, as we did a discussion of it on the previous show and the clip on YouTube, a lot of people have chimed in. A lot of people have heard it. Almost everybody in this whole thing is subject to some kind of blame, but anybody with a level head and a take on the real world knows that there was no excuse for what Raja did once he had a guy down unconscious in front of him. But have you heard he's been arrested, Brian, by any credible source or even incredible source?
No, I've not heard a single word about any. I heard that Psycho Stu is doing better and he's conscious, but I haven't heard anything about anything with Raja Jackson. No.
That's what I'm saying. This story took over the whole goddamn world for a couple of days, and then it's easier to get the Epstein files than it is to find out what's going on right now. Nobody else is saying anything. I've had random people that either on Twitter or commenting on the internet say that, everything from Stu's not going to press charges to I think Rampage has paid the cops off or whatever, but no reputable source with actual information has said any goddamn thing about what's going to go on from here. And I am frankly somewhat stumped and dismayed that we don't have. They got a GoFundMe for his medical bills. It's raised $100,000 or whatever. But I'm not even going to relitigate the incident. And again, Brian, it's over 300,000 downloads, the clip on YouTube, us talking about the incident, just us, much less everybody else in the world talked about it. And that's not even counting our podcast numbers. But hey, is somebody not going to go to Psycho Stu and say, Mr. Stu, you may have been a goddamn outlaw mud show wrestler on the weekends as a veteran to deal with your PTSD last week, but now if you simply press charges against this guy that bashed your face in, then even if the criminal charges don't result in anything past a slap on the wrist or even a dismissal, these civil charges, the civil suit is going to be much more productive. There is no jury in the world, whether it was supposed to be part of a quote unquote fake wrestling match or not. There is no jury in the world that can see the footage of what happened in the parking lot with dehydrated Alpha and the whole Hee-Haw gang, and the can on the head, and the shaking of the hands, and then the guy sitting in the front row saying, well, they told me he was, but I'm going to hit this motherfucker as many times as I can till they pull me off of him. And then him doing exactly that, when then sending the guy with the fucking ambulance with the teeth and the mouth and the blood, and da-da-da-da. Case closed, as Judge Otto Dealer would say. Case is closed, baby. I don't know how much money Rampage still has. I don't know what this moron spawn of his does for an actual living. But I don't know if there's any insurance companies involved in this, but if Psycho Stu has one chance in his life of being a multimillionaire, and how is this already not in motion, baby? Because nobody, in much less criminal, if there's friends of friends or whatever the fuck involved, there's no. Brian, can you see a case where a civil jury would not award this fucking guy anything he's asking for?
No. In California, no.
How about in Montana? Anywhere?
No.
No.
I mean, I saw an interview. I don't know how much you got to see of anything else, but there was an interview with the cowboy hat guy.
Oh, I watched it too.
And he's trying to wash his hands of the whole thing too. He's trying to blame just the promoter and I guess the dehydrated Alpha, as you have called him, which has become a popular nickname very quickly. He's trying to say it was all him, that he didn't do anything wrong, and he's really upset about it. He lost his job. But did you get to see any of that?
Yes. And I got to say, what's his name? AJ Mana?
I think so.
The cowboy. And see, everybody's like, yo, Brian, they should have done research, Brian and Jim. They don't even know these people's names. Nobody knows these people's names. They're starting to now because they're all a bunch of fucking lunatics. But I'll say this about the cowboy. He can cut a promo. Of course, either that or he's a goddamn raging mental case also. And in this situation, you're not sure which one. Maybe both these things can be true. But he came off like a fucking lunatic that can cut a great promo. I don't, if he was working for the post office, I'd goddamn start going to UPS. But yeah, they're all trying to blame. But there's plenty of blame to go around. And I am not going to sit here and again relitigate the various cases against everybody that many are talking about, the drinking in the locker room and letting people in and this and that and the promoter sanctioning it, whatever. And Rikishi wasn't even there. But I'm just saying that Psycho Stu has one chance in his life of being a multimillionaire. And I would hate to see him blow it over somebody. What do you think they're going to say? Well, don't press charges, or they won't let you wrestle anymore down here. Oh, it's my weekends. What am I going to do?
You know, in this case, I actually care less about Psycho Stu suing.
How about Sioux City Sue?
But more importantly, the idea of charges being filed or an arrest being made, because more importantly, Roger Jackson shouldn't be allowed to just walk around after doing what he did and then running away from it because he knew what he did was wrong.
But you know what? Here's what I'm thinking we were wrong, Brian, about I don't know whether he should go to prison. Because in all honesty, said that it would probably be a short prison sentence. He might do one of these Dominic Mysterio things. And he might come out of it and make a fucking profitable gimmick out of it. And, you know, if he went to the county jail for 6 months or so, he could come out, he could do the whole Dominic Mysterio thing. You know what would be worse punishment? Worse punishment for him, because what was this whole thing about? His father, apparently, from what everybody's saying in all the comments that follow these people and their various lives and activities, making coleslaw and taking a shit, his father browbeats him verbally, treats him like shit, and hadn't been a good parent. And this guy, he's a fucking wannabe MMA fighter that already got a concussion in sparring. Good Lord, hopefully they'll wrap him in bubble wrap next time. So he's already soft. And then he took the cheap shots here, so we know he's a pussy. Instead of glorifying him, sending him to prison, what about if all of the people that heard about this whole incident, and like I said, there was over 300,000 of just our clip on YouTube, and then plus the podcast numbers, and everybody else talked about this. So millions and millions.
Most watched indie match ever, you could say.
What about if everybody for the rest of this kid, Roger Jackson's life, every time they saw him coming, they said, hey, look at there. There's bitch Jackson. Because that's what he was all upset about. They ain't going to treat me like a bitch. They ain't going to call me like a bitch. Well, it's from now on. Just laugh at him. The big pussy that he is, that he has to beat up unconscious people. And just, hey, bitch, how you doing? And smile at him. If he goes in the post office, or he goes in a restaurant, or he goes in the fucking gas station, or whatever, hey, it's bitch. How you doing, bitchy? For the rest of his life, that would drive him out of his mind. And I don't know how it works with what do they call these things? The twitches and the kicks that he was streaming on.
Well, I don't know what platform he was streaming on, but Twitch is I don't know about kicks, but Twitch is a streaming service, yes.
Well, whatever they are, or I don't know how Facebook works and all the Twitters that they do and the Instagram and Telegram and whatever. You start calling him Bitch Jackson. Hey, bitch. That will send this fucking guy up a goddamn telephone pole. And since Quentin Rampage Jackson is a great fighter, Hall of Fame fighter, so we can't call him a bitch, but since he has spawned a little bitch, then he becomes the bitch father. Because he's a better fighter than he is a father, because he fucked up because of this kid. How many times you think Quentin Rampage Jackson wants to be called the bitch father? Then he'll go to bitch Jackson and say, you dumb, stupid motherfucker, you've ruined our goddamn lives with your fucking idiot shit. So all the wrestling fans could get together and wage a bitch campaign against the bitch Jacksons.
Well, apparently they'll get to see him. He's booked for some show, apparently, allegedly.
Exactly.
Danger Pro Wrestling.
We heard this right before we were starting to record this program. I've never heard of Danger. Wait a minute. That was a fucking band, right? Danger?
Maybe, yeah.
But they didn't have anything to do with wrestling.
Danger, High Voltage. That's a song.
Well, there you go. One of those things. Where are these people from and what do they do? And they are apparently alleging that they are bringing Raja Jackson to their event to do what remains to be seen. But the first of the lowlifes comes out from under a rock.
Yeah, and there's no date attached. They put up a image coming soon to Danger Pro Wrestling, Raja Jackson. In a bold move, they're writing this about themselves. In a bold move, indie pro wrestling company Danger Pro books now infamous son of Rampage Jackson, Raja Jackson, for upcoming appearance at their event. That's the way it's phrased there. No event is listed. Stay tuned for opponent and date. All dates are currently listed on our Eventbrite. San Diego. So apparently this is Southern California. Here's another show of theirs. Dirty Ron presents.
Wait a minute. Hold on. No, we can't talk about that line of videos. I've seen a bunch of those. Dirty Ron's videos. No.
Dirty Ron presents Devil's Night of Death Matches, tribute to Sabu.
Oh, good Lord.
All death matches, only
all the time.
Only 80 tickets. October 31st.
San wait Diego. A minute. Only 80 tickets or only 80 tickets left?
It says only 80 tickets on their image. They put that there. It wasn't something I made up. Doors 7:30, all ages before 10 p.m. 7:30 to 10 p.m. wrestling. There'll also be a costume contest for a cash prize. Trying to see anything else here. There's another show. Danger 7/27/24. So apparently this was over a year ago. Oh, it says here, happy 1-year anniversary to Danger Pro. 42 shows in 52 weeks. Not bad. Hashtag San Diego, Costa Mesa.
Wait a minute. 42 shows in a year, but in a building that holds 80 people. What do you think the profit margin is here?
I'm not sure. Here's another one of their shows, Live Pro Wrestling. Oops, all death matches. And is that the Necro Butcher? And yeah, they have the Necro Butcher for the Dirty Ron's Devil's Night of Death Matches. Only 80 tickets. Necro Butcher will be there on the show. Also, Damien.
I thought, wait a minute. Hold on. I thought he retired 15 years ago.
No, I had heard that he was doing some stuff not too long ago. So I knew he was doing something, but I didn't realize he was working for Danger Pro in front of 80 people in San Diego. Damien 666. Lucha legend. Apparently he's working for them. Bestia 666. So they're really getting all the 666.
Wait a minute! Shouldn't there be heat between the Bestia 666 and the Damien 666 over the gimmick? Are they a team?
I am not sure. It seems like they use a lot of. Well, if these aren't luchadors, they're people who dress like luchadors.
Well, I was about to say this also. Nick Goulish used to book the fucking interns in 3 different towns on the same night. And just send the real ones to the town that had the best advance. So
apparently this is Dirty Ron. It says, because it's a happy birthday thing, Dirty Ron McDonald, and he's dressed like a evil Ronald McDonald in terms of face paint, I guess. So he must be one of the head honchos at Danger Pro. Quickly, if you want to go see this show, there may only be 80 tickets. You better hurry up quick and get those tickets. We'll see what happens. What do you think of the idea of someone booking him? The idea of someone booking him and wrestlers being okay with that.
Well, we have no evidence that any of these people on these shows are actually real wrestlers that work anywhere else or are goddamn affiliated with anything otherwise than Dirty Ron's wet dream or whatever this is. I think
bar wrestling. That's what this is.
Is it even that dignified? But nevertheless, I think it would be ridiculous to book this fucking guy on anything that alleges themselves to be professional wrestling, trying to draw fans of professional wrestling, not garbage death match or not drunken bums in a bar or not as part of a whole goddamn spectacle of lunacy. For anybody that's actually in the wrestling business, no, I think it would be ridiculous. And I think the fans would, if they won't tolerate Joey Ryan, how are they going to tolerate this fucking guy? At least Ryan never attempted to murder anybody. He wouldn't have been able to accomplish it to begin with, but he never tried. So how the fuck do you think wrestling fans on any type of legitimate show would, take this? No. Pitch Jackson.
If Vince McMahon could get arrested for that car accident on the Merritt Parkway, you would think Roger Jackson get arrested for attempting to murder someone on video in front of a live crowd. It's crazy that nothing's happened. We'll see what happens there. You brought up Joey Ryan. We haven't talked about this. Did you see that a few weeks ago he got booked for a show in Portland?
Yes.
And then people went completely crazy. I believe there was even like a gun threat or something, or a bomb threat. I forget exactly what it was. It was like a nutty thing. They immediately canceled the appearance, as you could expect would happen. And it turns out Joey Ryan now has a vlog, that's still a term that some people use apparently, about cancel culture. And if cancel culture is really justice, this guy who tried as hard as he could to get you canceled, funny enough, back in the day, he has a problem with cancel culture because it came after several women came out with accusations against him. Any thoughts on a purported attempted comeback and that he's still out there doing something?
Well, again, it was poorly thought out. He convinced some friend, a promoter that was either friendly to him or friendly to the idea of this might work. This might work. And they advertised him for a show in Portland. And there's apparently a infighting in the independent promotion of wrestling business in Portland between various groups. And everybody said, no, we don't want to see this fucking guy. And he got, again, bad backlash and it was canceled. But there's other drama and intrigue that I have honestly not cared enough to pay attention to, as far as the one promoter was telling the other promoter, well, goddamn, you're trying to put me out of business and etc.
Yeah, Mike Rogers, where are you? This is like perfect for Ring Around the Northwest. This is the kind of stuff we read for. Yes,
just put it on the mimeograph machine and send it down. But anyway, but nevertheless, no, nobody wants to see Joey Ryan. I'm surprised anybody wanted to see him, and the amount of people that wanted to see him was overblown back in the old days before everybody found out what a creep he was. And, by the way, after 5 years, everybody found out that all the people that was saying I was a fucking creep have all been turned out to be creeps. But nobody wants to see him, and it ain't going to work. So I don't know why anybody's fucking trying.
Well, here's a quote. This was in writing, maybe Facebook or something. The promoter of Portland Wrestling, and I'm not even sure who that is or what they do. Someone said, I don't think Joey Ryan was ever booked. You were just testing the waters. And the guy said, no, he definitely was. But at least I got the money back, minus like $12. My first 3 choices were unavailable. So I started going down the list of potential guys that were on the West Coast, available, and reasonably priced. I see now that my capacity for forgiveness is infinitely greater than the rest of the American wrestling scene, which I have learned from through this experience. So it's everyone else's fault for not forgiving Joey Ryan for alleged sexual assault stories that came out about him.
Well, I just
after he was the dick wrestler, it's not even getting into the actual work and his gimmick.
Well, yeah, I'd forgive him for that before I'd forgive him for the bad wrestling hysteria that he caused for 2 or 3 years amongst the indie lunatics with the rest of their fucking simpleton favorites. But there you have it. But you know what we need to do now, Brian? We need to switch a few gears because there is a brand new book coming out. And it's about the life of Gorilla Monsoon, who the vast amount of our audience knows as the announcer and the namesake of the gorilla position, et cetera, but who not only was an incredible pro wrestler, but at one time was one of the highest paid and most powerful people behind the scenes in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the WWF, and then as an extension in wrestling in general. And we had an opportunity to get the author of the new book, Irresistible Force, The Life of Gorilla Monsoon. None other than Brian Solomon. He's a member of the Arcadian Vanguard network of correspondents, as well as a great author. He did Blood and Fire with on the Sheik, now Irresistible Force. We had him phone in an interview with me not even 24 hours ago, and we're going to go to that as soon as you tell me that the Wayback Machine is prepped and we can make the seamless transition.
Well, I didn't say anything about seamless. I mean, the Wayback Machine's ready, but let's now go, Jim, through the pleasures and wonders of technology and time to your conversation with Brian Solomon.
All right, folks, on the hotline, we have none other than the author of the brand new book, Irresistible Force. It's the life of Gorilla Monsoon, and the man who covered it and wrote it, as well as being a correspondent in the Arcadian Vanguard universe. And, well, he's connected with a lot of people. It's Brian Solomon, everybody. Brian, thank you for being on the program.
Thanks for having me back, Jim. I'm glad to be here, as always, as you know.
Well, it's good to see you're back, especially after seeing your front. That's an old Jerry Lawler line. I'm sorry, but no, I guess the reason why that I'm especially impressed with the book that you've written is because it hit me not very long into it how overlooked Gorilla Monsoon is in relation to his importance, not only the business. At one time, he was one of the most powerful men in the business behind the scenes, but also the contribution he made to what became the modern day WWF, and how some things may not have been the same without him. And he's overlooked, and this biography sets that straight. But you almost have to introduce the fans to get them into this book as to who Gorilla was and why he was so important, because the home video era came in right at the tail end of his career. So in ring, a lot of people are like, what? They don't realize how great he was. And because he spent almost his entire career in the Northeast in the days of the territories, you read about him, but almost nobody in the rest of the country ever saw him. That to me is why a lot of guys, even in the business today, don't understand what a big deal Gorilla Monsoon was.
Yeah, and that's the reason, one of the main reasons I wanted to do the book, because as we all know, when you think of him today, especially people of a certain age, all we think of is the friendly announcer guy in the frilly tuxedo. And that's great. That's an important part of who he was. And he kind of narrated a lot of our wrestling memories and things, but there's so much more under the surface. And I started to try to understand why there had never been anything done. That was one of the things I thought, how come there's never been a book? There's never been a documentary. I almost feel like even WWE doesn't really, obviously if you watch their documentaries and their shows and their things, you always hear his voice on the narration of all the old clips, but they don't really even do much with him anymore as a historic figure. So I kind of wanted to correct
as far down the well as they have plumbed, and as much as they have gone into repetition, you would think we'd have got one good hour on Gorilla Monsoon, who was a partner to company for so many years.
And that's the thing. People don't really know that. They don't know that part. Like you mentioned, the wrestling stuff, how there's not a lot of video. And unfortunately, the video that there is of him as a wrestler is really from the later part of his career. And I think that's why sometimes he gets a bad reputation as really being not a great worker or just kind of boring and dull in the ring. And I explain a lot of that in the book, how his best stuff when he was a physical athletic phenomenon, which he was, is really before video. There's not a single Gorilla Monsoon versus Bruno Sammartino match or even a segment of one of their matches that you can watch. So it's like this weird archaeology you have to do. The only way you could see him in his prime is there's some stuff from Japan. Same thing with the Sheik, how they did a much better job preserving their footage over there. You can get a glimpse of it. But I devoted really the first half of this book is all the wrestling years, the years before he was an announcer.
Well, yeah, because again, if people do know the name Gorilla Monsoon in the modern era, the announcer with Bobby Heenan and blah, blah, blah. And, and he was great in that role and was well known by the national television audience, but nobody understands why in a 1980 Madison Square Garden, card, there'll be Gorilla Monsoon in the ring and he's out of shape and he looks, and the people are going ballistic. There, they remembered it had only been 15 years. He was like, in the pantheon of immortals, and you'd be watching in Dallas, Texas, or Kansas City going, what the fuck is happening? But he also didn't push himself down people's throats in terms of nobody wanted to see him up there on the cards. In a lot of cases, he was working on a card where he would be the office representative and they'd put him in a feature match because his name sold tickets. Or they'd put him in the Garden into the 6-man or whatever, or to get a upcoming heel over because he still sold tickets. But you wouldn't understand that unless you were in that territory at the time.
Right. He might be a semi-main event, or like you said, somebody that is getting the heel ready for Backlund or for Bruno, whoever the case may be, or maybe beating them on when they're on their way down, that kind of a thing. But you're right. He had a history there that if you think about it, if you're a fan in the 70s, late 70s, mid 70s, whatever, you definitely remember, or at least people who do, when he was really in his prime. And I talk about in the book how he kind of earned the respect of fans by being such an important figure in the 60s. I mean, he was really the WWE, whatever the company was known as over the years, their first monster heel. I mean, that's a really important, because that company is known for monster heels. And he was the first one. He was the first homegrown, created monster heel. And he went through the whole transformation of, winning the fans over, which was rare in those days. It wasn't something that happened every week on television like it does today, where good guys turn bad, bad guys turn good. It was a very, very big deal. This guy who was an absolute monster turned into one of the most beloved, well-spoken, charismatic figures, of course, with no explanation, because that's wrestling.
It was like a New Jersey version of Fritz von Erich in Dallas. All of a sudden, he's a German, but he's home, and they accept it.
Yeah, they got to the point where they just kind of gave up. They would introduce him as the all-Asiatic champion from Willingboro, New Jersey. That's that for real.
But that's going back even further. You mentioned what an athletic freak he was. He was a legitimate amateur wrestler in school and wrestled at a high level all the way through college. And even though he was big, he was one of those guys that was big and still in shape and still mobile, etc. in the early years. And it didn't take, much time with a guy like that, who also, we would find out, had the intelligence, had the aptitude for the business of wrestling. He gets trained, he gets, the minor pushes in Western New York and etc. But by the time he's Gorilla Monsoon and he's selling all those tickets in all those buildings in the Northeast, he's impressing on Vince Sr., Zacco, Gilzenberg, all those guys that were involved in those days. Hey, this kid is smart, and he's smart to the business, and he's dependable. I've always said, the boys can't work themselves into ownership anymore. And Gorilla did it in the same place he really got started, never had to leave, and at one time was one of the highest paid guys in the business.
Yeah, he really won them over it was a combination of, obviously he was a great draw in his prime and he could really work and he had great matches with everybody. And like you said, he was a great athlete and an NCAA heavyweight finalist. AAU, he was like a standby member of the team, almost made it to the 1960 Olympics. I'm not going to say he was one of the absolute greatest amateur wrestlers to ever turn pro. I don't quite know if I'd put him in that class, but he was very, very good. And it helped that he was huge. And then when he got into wrestling, and like you said, this was a time when a lot of those guys did not have a lot of education. And a lot of them were not very, their main ambition was just where their next meal was going to come from.
They were smart from the carnivals right, instead of the universities.
They were street smart, and so they looked at somebody like Gorilla and they saw potential there. He had so many things together. He was very imposing physically, so he wasn't somebody anybody was going to mess with. He was very smart about the business. He was well educated. He was well liked. That's important too. He was well liked and respected. And so when I talk about the transition in the book where they start to look at him as somebody who could be a partner and could be part of the office, that's really how it goes. And he's 32 years old when that happens. I'm thinking in my head, yep, 32 years old. And they cut him in for what was at the time 25% ownership.
Well, now hold on. Let's not bury the lead. Explain to the folks who they were. Gorilla's 32. That's in what year?
1969.
Okay, 69. He spent the previous about 5 years or so as the phenomenon that he was in the ring for him at the time, and he's generated him a lot of business. But who are the partners at the time, and exactly how did that go down?
So he came first to Capital Wrestling, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, in the summer of 1963. And basically he was plugged in as a replacement for Buddy Rogers to be the top heel, the top threat to Bruno, because Rogers had been flaking out and making all these money demands, and he had health issues, and Vince had a lot of buyer's remorse about dealing with him. And so they brought in this kid who was a rookie practically and had a lot of the tools that they wanted. And he was there. He took a brief trip out to California in 65, 66 for about a year just to freshen himself up and came back. But pretty much he was there all through the 60s in the Northeast. And by the time so at that time in the 60s, the Capital Wrestling Corporation is 50% Vince McMahon Sr., Vince and James McMahon, and 50% Toots Mondt. So in 1969, Toots is looking to retire. That's what happened, basically. And he's looking to sell his 50% share. Now, what the original thinking was that they were going to give the other half to Bruno. And that's in the book too, where they wanted to do that whole deal, like where the top star would be, like a Jerry Lawler thing. And Bruno was a little, he held all those guys at arm's length. And he wanted lawyers involved and accountants involved. And they said, no, that's not how we're going to do this. That doesn't work that way. And he said, well, then I'm not going to take the deal. I don't want to be in bed with you guys. He didn't trust them as far as he could throw them, even from the beginning. That whole animosity with him and the McMahon family goes back to the beginning. It wasn't just something that started with Junior. So basically, they were looking around and they decided they were going to split it. So they wound up giving half of Mondt's shares to Phil Zacco, who had been this loyal promoter for them going back to the 50s. He was, a dinosaur even then. Yeah. And they trusted him. He ran a lot of their TVs and things. And he was the front man, basically, because Vince McMahon would not be listed as the owner and all this. So you'd have Gilzenberg, who was never a part owner, by the way, and you'd have Zacco. So they decided they were going to give Zacco half of it and the other half, at Bruno's suggestion, partly, I think they would have to have agreed with it, was to go to Gino, to Gorilla Monsoon. And that happened in the summer of 69, where they made him this offer. And it happened. I actually got my hands on the paperwork. It's not reprinted in the book, but it's described in the book. And the deal was made on the very same day of the television taping where they turned him babyface.
Well, you can't have these crazy wild men from Manchuria, showing up at the office. But was the amount recorded?
Yes, it's in there. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I believe they each paid $24,000, something in that range. $24,000.
For 25% each of what would later become the modern day WWE.
Yes. So the company that's now worth like whatever it is, $10 billion, a quarter of that company in 1969 would set you back about 25 grand. And he and Zacko had a deal with Tutsmont where they were going to send him a monthly check for like 10 years of whatever it came out to, a few $100s a month. And Tutsmont died in 1976. And my understanding is they continued to send those checks to his widow, to Alma. I think her name is Alma or Alva.
I think Alma. You're right. You something along those lines.
Because he retired and went to St. Louis. One of the reasons he was getting old, and also his mother-in-law was very sick. I can't imagine. I think he had a very young wife. That's what it was. And his mother-in-law was very sick, and they went back to St. Louis to take care of her, and they continue to get these checks. The ironic thing is that would mean that they wouldn't finish paying it off until 1979, and then it's just 3 years later that they all get bought out by Vince Jr. anyway.
And they're still paying Toots' widow. And by the way, even 25 grand in 1970, even with the inflation calculator, which I don't have in front of me, but I can do some of it in my head at this point, that's barely 100 grand, if that, in today's money.
Right. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but Vince Jr., when he bought it from them, the total was something like 7-point-something million. That's what he paid for the whole thing.
And I think he made his money back. But
oh, yeah.
But that's the thing with Gorilla, and we told the story that he was known for, Gorilla Monsoon, even when he was the WWF president and just, at catering, you go up to him, he would have a roll of bills. He'd have $10,000 in cash on him in his pocket. And you would ask, Gorilla, what do you got? Well, I might need to buy something. He was at that point in time when he not only was still a main event wrestler in 1969, but was a 25% owner of the company. Over the next 10 years, good Lord, he was one of the highest paid. You can say the promoters made more. Some promoters made more than in their territories than maybe his 25%. But as a wrestler still, he was one of the highest paid wrestlers in the business.
Yeah, he was definitely in the same rarefied air as somebody like a Bruno. I mean, he definitely wasn't making Bruno money as a wrestler, but he was in the six-figure range, as far as I was able to determine. The thing about it, the irony of what he did was when the whole deal happened with Vince Jr., and one of the things I get into in the book is how that was not the most harmonious. It wasn't like some sweet passing of the torch that I think we're sometimes led to believe.
Yeah.
And Gorilla was not in favor of it. And I didn't realize to what degree. And, I talked to his family. I talked to people that were close to him. And the reason he got such a sweetheart deal is because they had to make him happy. Otherwise, he would have fought it. Like, Arnie Skolin, bless him, would have went along with anything they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And Vince getting his dad on his side, it's his dad. So he was able to kind of get him on his side. And Zacko was very, very old and just wanted out. So he really didn't care. Gorilla would have been the obstacle. And they had to do everything in their power to make him happy. But still, it was a bittersweet thing because he was making, let me put it this way, at the height of his earning in his announcer years, he was making the best money of his career. He certainly was because of the deal he had set up. But he knew that he wasn't making anywhere near what he would have been making if he'd been allowed to hold on to his percentage of the ownership.
Yes.
So you had to sort of balance those two things of, well, I'm doing the best that I've ever done, but wow, I could be doing a whole lot better. I mean,
Well, and he didn't have full confidence in, at the early point when all this was first going on, that Vince Jr., Vincent Kennedy McMahon, may necessarily be able to pull this off. It wasn't like he was, a full-throated endorsement. Oh, Vince he's the genius at that point.
Right. And I think people have to remember that, because now we have this picture of Vince. Well, I mean, now we have a very different picture of Vince.
Do you have pictures of Vince? If you've got pictures of Vince, call Stephen P. New.
But the image he's created for himself, and the post 1985 Vince or whatever, as this mastermind and brilliant promoter and everything, that was not how he was viewed in the business. I mean, when you think about, I'm talking about before that, when you think about promoters' sons, right? I mean, historically in wrestling, they're not that well regarded usually. People like Captain Ed George, right? Who from my last book, or
George
Goulas, right? It's sort of like somebody that you have to just put up with because they're the boss's son, and you got to humor them. And that is also how Vince was viewed. He was not really a success. He had failed at many things before that. He was always coming to his dad and all of them for money. He was struggling. He had very young children. And so it was a very dicey proposition. He also got a sweetheart deal himself, because when Vince Sr. was looking to sell, there were other interested parties. And it's pretty much a guarantee that the deal that his son got was a much better deal than anybody else would have gotten.
They just kept running the business, and Vince Jr. paid Vince Sr. out of the money from the gates, and nothing changed.
And they gave him every grace period imaginable. So like when the sale first happened, and this is something I think that gets misunderstood a lot. It was June 1982 when they actually sat down and signed the papers and everything. But the sale itself was not completed for a year. So Vince Jr., and that's why things don't really get moving on that national expansion until late 83, because it took a year for everything to be solidified. They had to make sure that he really had the money. And the thing was, in June of 83, a year later, they still didn't have all of it. And they needed there was like a month's grace period that was built into the deal. And they gave him one more month. And miraculously, somehow, he managed to come up with the rest of it in that month. And he was always, and I will say this, he was very grateful in the end. And it's another reason why I think he was loyal to guys like Gorilla and Arnie, because they gave him that leeway. They didn't call in, the loans. They didn't say, well, the deal's up. They actually gave him the benefit of the doubt. And so there was the loyalty there.
There was also an element with Arnold Skolin, with the agents that were there for quite some time. Those specific people, Vince Jr. could say to himself, well, I'm taking care of my dad's guys like he wanted me to, while he had completely put all of his dad's associates out of business across the rest of the country.
Right.
So it's kind of a trade-off for him.
Yeah. And also, I got the sense of this, and this is something that I didn't see talked about a lot, is there really was a lot of doubt and cynicism among all those old timers. All those people that we see as the ones that were the true loyalists, the Blassies, well, certainly Albano. I mean, he blew himself up there, but all those guys, Skolin and Monsoon, they were very, very skeptical of Vince Jr., very skeptical. They still saw him as a kid, and they kind of just went along with things in a lot of ways because they didn't want to rock the boat. But there was always that skepticism there. Like even from talking to his family, you definitely get a sense, I'm talking about Gorilla's family, that there was a lot of unspoken things, a lot of like, we better keep our mouths shut. We don't want to ruin a good thing here, that kind of a thing. And like, one of the things that's always a standout to me is they all still, especially Gorilla, they all still call him Vinny and Junior and things like that. It's almost like their way of keeping him in his place. And that was one thing I found out about Gorilla, was that he insisted, especially privately when they weren't on camera, he always called him Vinny or
Vinny.
Junior or Vinny Jr. I think they did that sort of thing on purpose.
Well, and at the time in the early 80s, Vince Jr. had been the announcer, and, he looked good in the suits and et cetera. And he had, as you said, been given a number of opportunities and chances. But Gorilla, through the 70s, in the locker room, behind the scenes, whether he was Booker or whether he was what do they call it now, the younger generation, the locker room leader, the Undertaker, the guy that would settle disputes, or I'm not talking about taking somebody to the gym and stretching them, sit guys down, keep order in the locker room, be the leader, be the figure that's respected. They knew he was a part owner, but also if he told you to do something, even if you were a wrestler, he was an intimidating son of a gun in those days, and you did it. And he had been integral, because all the rest of the office at that time were, Vince Sr. was not, he was the boss, but he wasn't, imposing in the way that he would come in the locker room and start telling everybody what to do. He had the smoother approach. And then, was Phil Zacco going to come in? Hey, do this and do that. No, Gorilla was the guy that held the company together with the talent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the approach of the father and son, McMahon's, couldn't have been more different. I mean, everything that I have always learned was that he was a very hands-off, kind of broad strokes kind of guy. Like he trusted other people to do their jobs. He would kind of put his head together with Bruno, and they would kind of book the top feuds and things. And Gorilla was involved in that as well. But he really just kind of holed himself up in his office at the Garden and just held court, basically, and trusted other people to do their job. And when you had somebody like Gino in there, you could trust him to do the job. And one of the things that's so interesting is he was so imposing and so and respected. I don't want to just make it sound like people were just terrified of him, that he really was rarely, if ever, actually tested. Like nobody even tried.
Yeah.
One of the only times, in fact, which comes up in the book because it's so rare, was all the stuff with Bruiser Brody.
And I was just going to say, and you can recount the story, but that's so ironic given both guys' connection to Puerto Rico. But go ahead.
That's true. And that is such a strange, it's like one of wrestling's odd coincidences in a way. I don't think there's a connection other than a coincidence, because one of Brody's first big programs, in fact, where he got the name, was in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in the mid-'70s, when they were prepping him to be Frank Goodish, to be an opponent for Bruno.
Right.
And of course, they gave him one of their big Irish, everybody had to have an Irish name, especially, I mean, he named Blackjack Mulligan, Hulk Hogan. He just loved the Irish names. And but the thing about it was that Brody, I'm not the first one to say this, could be a very difficult wrestler to deal with. And, he could be not only outside the ring, but even inside the ring. He could be sometimes kind of a bully in the ring and maybe not always do what they wanted him to do. And you know what? He committed the cardinal sin that a wrestler can commit, which is putting your own needs first, right? Because, they always want you to not do that so that you can kind of go with the flow. And Gorilla, as likable as he was and as competent as he was also a company guy. And his attitude towards the business was the opposite. He was very smart about the business, but he thought of it more as, quote unquote, for the good of the business. He was one of those guys who really thought about not just himself, and I really do believe that, but the business itself, and especially the company. And so someone like Brody is kind of like your worst nightmare, a person like that to come in there. And so their relationship was very tense. I tried my best to get to the bottom of it. It's murky. It's murky. I had to go by some people who had firsthand accounts. I talked to Kevin Sullivan about it. He was one of the first people I interviewed because he was there in the locker room in Worcester, Massachusetts, which was the first time that Jose Gonzalez and Brody had wrestled. And when he kind of roughed him up and there was a big fight in the locker room and Gorilla had to get involved to break it up. So I was going by these kind of secondhand accounts and things like that to determine how bad it had been. But I think it's very telling that Brody never came back. They kind of made their money with him and then he never came back. But the Puerto Rico connection is really insane because as some people may know, Gorilla Monsoon owned part of Puerto Rico, the what's now WWC. He owned 10% of it.
And if you can't explain the World Wrestling Council, Carlos Colon, as people they're joined one to the other in most wrestling fans' minds, but it was started in the early 70s, and it was one of the later additions to the territories. And Gorilla, through a few different contacts, had connections and was able to help out pretty much near the start of it, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Because Puerto Rico had, before Carlos Colon, it had sort of been a satellite of Florida a lot of times. So Eddie Graham would run occasionally there. And that is how the Capital WWF people got plugged into it, because they were very close to Eddie Graham. So when the deal was being made of, Eddie Graham is going to kind of give his blessing to Carlos Colon that, Puerto Rico is yours. People like Vince Sr. and Gorilla were involved in all of that because they all moved in the same circles. And so it got onto Gorilla's radar. It's this wonderful place. The weather's beautiful. They have casinos everywhere, which is like, that's like music to his ears. You can go on vacation there and great. And not only that, but he also had a close working relationship with a lot of the Latino wrestlers, even predating that. If you talk to people like Johnny Rodz and Pete Sanchez and all those guys, they adored him. So it was like he was a natural liaison. He could bring some of those guys from New York down to Puerto Rico. He could bring some of the Puerto Rico wrestlers up to New York, which he did.
And also he was smart enough to realize, whereas Eddie Graham and the Florida office was running it as a spot show, so maybe guys could go over and spend a couple of days or whatever. A homegrown territory. They'd never done big business. Their big business was in Florida, and that was a spot show for them. But a homegrown territory with native talent on the island with local television was a gold mine.
That's right. Their business was off the charts. I mean, the hunger for wrestling in Puerto Rico was, unlimited. I mean, it was on fire. And that's how Carlos Colon had been basically an enhancement guy in New York. He had not been, and he turned himself into, a major, major deal because that area, that region was starved for big wrestling, and to have its own wrestling organization was huge. It was really the first time in modern times that had happened.
And they're running ballparks, and Gorilla's got 10%.
Yeah. And the way he got it was the original ownership was Colon, Victor Jovica, and Victor Jovica's brother for some reason. And Jovica's brother sold his shares, his 10%, to Gorilla. And the thing about the Brody connection is, a lot of people think, and I dispel this in the book, and I'm not afraid to give this away because there's tons of great stuff in the book, but this whole kind of ridiculous idea that Gorilla, didn't like Brody, and Gorilla owned a part of Puerto Rico, so connect the dots, blah, blah, blah. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. But what happened was the 10% that Gorilla owned, he no longer owned at the time that any of that stuff happened with Brody and Jose Gonzalez in Puerto Rico. He had been out of it for years. In fact, he gave his 10%, and I believe he gifted it. I don't even think he sold it. He gave it to Victor Quinones.
Victor.
Yes. And Victor Quinones supposedly, allegedly, was in talks to sell that 10% to Brody. And of course, something like that made Jose Gonzalez go through the roof. Because not now he'd be stuck with this guy who he hated, and now he might even be his boss. So it was all kind of connected in this weird way. But, I get into the book about how Gorilla found out about what had happened down there when Brody was killed, how, Victor called him, and it was this whole thing, and how absolutely devastated he was. And I want to make that clear, because it's one thing to not like somebody for professional reasons and to think they're a pain in the ass. It's quite another thing to want them dead. And I think people who make that connection are just being ridiculous. And there's absolutely no factual basis for that at all.
Well, obviously, and that's the thing is, people are always trying to, if they see a coincidence, then they're trying to tell the backstory. But and also you give some detail in the book on Gorilla's relationship. Where you mentioned him, Victor Quinones, and I said a little Victor because that was the way that they were known in the days where there were sort of like, I got two Brians on a show. Solomon and Last, in the days where there was a Victor Jovica and a Victor Quinones in the office, little Victor was to differentiate from Jovica, and he was like a surrogate son for years and years to Gorilla.
He was. And I want to emphasize that word surrogate, because if there's no other purpose that this book serves, if I could.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Get that out of the way now.
I want to get it out of the way because I know you read the book. I actually stopped the whole narrative of the book just to address this thing, because it is one of the most persistent and stubborn urban legends in the history of wrestling. I've even confronted people who repeat it as fact, and you discover that their basis for that is really nothing. It's just everybody. Okay, so I guess I'll just spell it out.
Yes.
The rumor that Victor Quinones was some type of illegitimate love child or something of Gorilla Monsoon is false. And I debunk it very thoroughly in the book in a lot of different ways. One thing I'll just say,
amazingly enough, with facts.
Hey, imagine, you ever heard of those? Yeah. Well, here's a big one. And I'm not saying this is the be all and end all, but this is really what really got me thinking, okay, this is a lot of nonsense. And I started looking further into it. So there's this assumption, right? When people say, oh, Victor Quinones was actually Gorilla Monsoon's son. So the assumption they're making is that at some point, Gorilla Monsoon was wrestling down in Puerto Rico, right? And he had something happened down there with a fan or God knows what, and he wound up fathering a baby that he didn't know about, or he found out years later. Well, here's the thing. When Victor Quinones was born, Bob Morella was in Ithaca College in upstate New York. Now, I'm not saying that makes it impossible, but in the words of Gorilla himself, it would make it highly unlikely. So, and that's just the beginning. I'm not saying that's the only thing I go on, and even if you go back further, like at the time that he would have had to have been, for you biologists out there, for the time that he would have had to have been down in Puerto Rico, it would have been impossible. I mean, he was doing all his college competitions. He was a student.
He didn't just go on spring break to Puerto Rico and raise havoc, and that wasn't Gorilla. And here's the thing, where a lot of it comes from. In some cases, all of it comes from jealousy over a guy that has pull and power, taking somebody under his wing that everybody else is going, well, it could have been me, or why the fuck's it him, or I just don't like this. There were, in the Tennessee territory in the 80s, there were still guys that would swear, talent, wrestlers on the card that would swear that they knew for a fact, because the old timers told them, that Jerry Jarrett was Roy Welch's son. And that's why he made him the booker. And that's why the blah, blah, blah. Ignoring the fact that at the time Jerry Jarrett was born, Christine Jarrett was married to a guy that later went in the service during World War II, and it didn't even enter the world or realm of wrestling to get a second job until after the war was over with and she had separated from her husband. So there was, again, shit doesn't work, but the guys can't stand it. They would sit, and especially before cell phones and computers and all earbuds and all the fancy Dan entertainment, that was the primary occupation in the locker room, especially amongst the heels, was sit around in a circle and bitch about the office.
Yeah, and it didn't help with the rumor situation when he actually moved in with the Morella family. So that, that added fuel to the fire. But really, I know it's hard to believe, especially in the wrestling business, but Gorilla was just a really nice guy. He was a caring, decent guy. He saw this kid whom he first met in the early 70s or maybe mid 70s when he was a teenager, basically carrying bags, driving them around. His mother ran the hotel where they all stayed at, the Tanama in Puerto Rico. And so he got to know all the wrestlers. He had a very, very bad upbringing. His stepfather had killed himself a few years before. He couldn't read or write. He had no education. And Gino just took him under his wing. For some reason, he saw this kid as somebody that he could shape and mold. There was something in him that he saw. He brought him back to New Jersey with him, and he lived there with them for years. And, I talked to the family about it too. And I was so embarrassed. Can you imagine to even have to bring this up? Because I did bring it up. I said, well, what about these stories and things? And they just kind of all laughed it off. But the thing about it was I think one of the reasons why the rumor persisted, and I wish they had done something about it, is they never saw it as being worthy of even dignifying with a response.
Yeah.
And they never chose to refute it or anything. They just laughed it off. But by doing that, though, I think they made it seem like it was some deep, dark secret, but it really wasn't. In fact, I mean, Victor was prone to exaggeration and telling crazy stories. And I think even he may have at times enjoyed the fact that people wondered if maybe he really was Gino's son. In fact, he had said in an interview with a Puerto Rican wrestling magazine, he claimed once that he wasn't Gorilla's son, but he was his godson. And that he had taken him in the Catholic Church.
Oh, Victor told me that to my face one time. Oh, Gorilla's my godfather.
Well, here's the thing. If he meant it as a term of endearment, if he meant it in like the Marlon Brando sense, maybe, perhaps. But he meant it in the literal sense that in church that he had taken him on as his godfather. And Maureen, God rest her soul, his late wife, who was helping me with the book, she said that even that was not true, that he was not even his godfather. So,
well, see, that's the thing that he got from Gorilla that's why Victor later on became a fairly successful promoter in overseas ventures and things, because he could tell a good story and concoct a fucking backstory to it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I guess makes you a success in the wrestling business. He never chose to. You know what the other thing is? The New York Times obituary. And I get into that in the book because the obituary in the New York Times actually said Morella is survived by his wife, Maureen, and his 3 children, daughters Sharon, Valerie, and son Victor Quinones of Puerto Rico. So
did Victor call the paper?
We'll never know, but I will say this. We all know that back in the day, now unlike today when the mainstream media is all over professional wrestling, you never really saw obituaries for pro wrestlers. You had to be a really big deal to get mentioned in that way. And when you did, it was full of mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think this was just like one of those games of telephone where just something got mistranslated, miscommunicated, a rumor, an unsubstantiated thing. It got put in the obituary. And when you talk to a lot of people today who believe the legend, they'll always point to that New York Times obituary, which is also false.
Well, speaking of falsified information in the newspaper, Gorilla had the column in to help me with the Philadelphia paper. What was it? The Inquirer?
The Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah. Inquirer, where in the year you're about to tell us, but somewhere in the early 80s, he announced to the people that superstar Billy Graham was dead and never actually retracted it, even after superstar Billy Graham showed back up in front of him. And was it just, could he just, was it a rib at that point where he's like, I'll rib him. People still think he's dead. It's a new Billy Graham. They replaced him.
Right. So it was 1981. And ironically, Superstar would be back in the company wrestling about a year after that. But these things, like I always say, it's partly archaeology because I can't ask either one of those guys about it. But they did, at least Superstar especially, did talk about it in later years. It's a very strange thing that happened. And even Davey O'Hannon told me that a lot of the boys who knew Graham came to Gino and said, well, he seems pretty alive to me. I was just talking to him the other day and things like that. One of the reasons I think he was able to get away with it was that Graham kind of went on this lost weekend period, right? Between in that era, he was hardly wrestling anywhere. I think he had like one match maybe within the span of a year or two. He wasn't doing much of anything.
No, and that's the thing, the state of mind that he was in at that time. You know, if things had gone worse, he might have been dead, but he certainly was out of sight.
So one thing I was able to determine about this, and again, I know I'm giving away all the great secrets of this book, but
no, you couldn't do that. We're only going to be here like an hour. There's no way you could do that. This thing is incredible.
Exactly. Thank you. I stand by the book. There's so much good in it. I don't mind giving away stuff.
Hey, we barely skipped over the 50s and 60s and early 70s, which is the best part of the things because that's what everybody don't know. I learned so much shit. But go ahead, back to the death of Billy Graham.
Yeah. So apparently, the originator of the urban legend may have been Dusty Rhodes, because, and it may have been a rib, actually, indeed a rib, where I think, so Graham had said in an interview in later years that Dusty Rhodes had started the rumor. Now, I looked things up when I was putting this together. Dusty Rhodes, at the time, a few months prior, had gone through one of his trips through the Northeast. And I think it's very conceivable that he might have put his head together with Gorilla Monsoon and thought, hey, this would be a great rib. You should keep it going. Again, I cannot prove that, but the pieces add up. The other piece of the puzzle is, speaking of Brody and difficult people with The Office, Superstar Graham was another one who had, I think, left kind of a bad taste in people's mouths with how everything went down and being a little bit difficult to work with, difficult to get the belt off of, and kind of temperamental. And again, when you think of Gino as part of The Office, even though he always was still one of the boys, but part of The Office, you can understand that, you know, Billy Graham may not have been his number one favorite person on earth. You know what I mean? He might have said, oh yeah, let's get this pain in the ass. You know what I mean? What do you want me to write in my column, Dusty? You got it. All right, let's get this guy. And no, he never retracted it. And it got to the point where when Graham came back as the Kung Fu, Billy Graham, a lot of the fans, particularly in Philadelphia, right, where the thing had run, were convinced that it wasn't the same guy because Gorilla had told them he was dead.
Well, yeah, and he looked like he was at that time. That was the worst thing that anybody ever did to a superstar, was give him that gimmick, and he took it himself.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you're right. All the great stuff, the stuff from the 60s, I break down in very close detail because one of the things I wanted to do with the book is there's been a million documentaries and books and things and websites that talk about in such detail the WWF of the 80s and 90s and everything that went on and every last day. And even the 70s, you get a lot, you can glean a lot. The 60s is a very murky period. And I really wanted to kind of break it wide open and give the kind of clarity of what was happening in the company in the 60s, the same way they do for the 80s, to really show what was going on, because it's a lot more complicated than people think. Their business was very up and down. It wasn't as hot as I think sometimes people think it is. It got that way later on in the 70s, but they were on very shaky ground in the 60s, especially before they rejoined the NWA. And I wanted to get into that in the book.
And that we've talked on the show here before about a period of time they lost television in New York and didn't have a strong television presence, just on the Spanish language channels. And of course, even through the early 60s, as we've been talking about, Brian Last and I, the other Brian on the program here so often lately, Vince Sr. was even in and out at the Garden itself. He had Capital Wrestling in Washington, but Jack Pfeffer and the old guard was still around. And when Vince Sr. was able to keep Toots Mondt on his side, that kind of turned the tide at the last minute. But it'd been a transformative decade for wrestling in Madison Square Garden to begin with. And Gorilla came in and, at the right place, the right time with the right guy.
Yeah, because it wasn't until about 61 that Vince Sr. was really the only person, with the Johnston brothers and all that stuff, but the only person promoting wrestling at the Garden. There had been kind of like a 3 or 4 year tug of war that was going on where Pfeffer was coming in and Pedro Martinez and even Cola Quariani tried to start some kind of like revolt where, and that's how Bruno got blacklisted because he went to work for him.
Cola had been, and now that you mentioned that, I wonder if Bruno was mad at Vince Sr. all that time for something that Cola Quariani did, but he had been one of the wrestling advisory board to the Johnston brothers, the licensed promoters at Madison Square Garden, since the early 50s because he'd had a piece of Rocca and Rocca had been the golden goose. And at the Pfeffer files at Notre Dame, I saw from one of the promoters' letters a list of the guys that the Johnstons listened to, and Quariani was at the top of the list.
Well, he'd been around forever. I mean, he'd been around since the 20s, and he tried to start some trouble, and he tried to run opposition. And Bruno, who I think was very young and naive, he had this attitude of, well, I'm a pro wrestler. I'm an independent contractor. I could work for whoever I want. And he always had that attitude because even years later, he told me how Vince Sr. got really mad at him when he kept talking to Ivan Koloff, even after Koloff had joined the IWA with Eddie Einhorn, because that was Bruno's attitude. We can work for whoever we want to work for. And he made the mistake and he crossed Vince and he got blacklisted. And that was part of the reason why. But by the time Gorilla got there in 63, they had really solidified their, at least in New York, their control. But there were times, like you said, where they lost TV. Of all people, it was Crusher Verdue who helped them, sell out the Garden for the first time in years.
I know when I did an interview, a video with Bruno back over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. We were going over his record at the Garden and everything. I said, "You sold out with Crusher Verdue, Crusher Verdue." I couldn't even get Bruno to say anything bad about Crusher Verdue, but he was like, "Well, yes, he was good,
I think I chalk that more up to Albano because Albano was Albano's first guy. And I think Albano was just so damn good at generating heat and getting people pissed off and angry. I think it was more, it could have been nothing against Crusher Verdue. I think it could have been anybody. It helped that he was a big giant guy that really looked unstoppable. But that was one of the periods where they lost their TV and before that. And the Garden went dark. There were months where they just didn't even book any shows at the Garden. And this was during the time when they used to run monthly and they were taking time off, or there was one show where they drew something like 5,000 people, which was disastrous in those days. And so it wasn't this easy road that people remember. And I think that's partly why they were so loyal to Gino, because he had really proved himself. He had 7 main events. And this is the tragedy. We can't see any of this. He had 7 main events with Bruno Sammartino at the Garden alone. He had more than that, I think, in Philadelphia. I mean, they had big matches. They had their famous 70-minute curfew draw. They had the one at Roosevelt Stadium. I mean, he really proved himself, and they never forgot that.
Well, and apparently they forgot to film all those matches. And in the 60s, I wonder, well, you've been up there, Solomon Grande. You've been up there. To what extent, and this was probably, you were there before they stuck everything in the mountain. To what extent does even their library contain anything from the 60s, from this formative period up in the WWE now?
Well, I can only speak of the time that I was there, and I could also go by what I've seen since. And I know when I was there and I was able to even go physically into the room and look through everything myself, I saw nothing that predated the early 70s. And I'm telling you, I was looking, unless it's mislabeled, the early 70s was as far back as I saw. Now, I know over the years, a few things have surfaced, like there was the Bobby Davis tape. I think I had told you about it, where Bobby Davis had made a kind of a highlight reel of all his best stuff.
Yeah.
And it contained some 60s Capitol. There's a couple of, and by a couple, I mean like literally 2 episodes of Capitol Wrestling from the 60s that are floating around, a handful of garden matches. But you can't, there's nothing. There is, if it exists, I would be happy to see it and retract this.
Yes.
But there isn't a single minute of footage of Gorilla Monsoon as a heel in the WWF. Not a single minute of it.
Well, an idea, you retweeted or tweeted or sent out the clip from his Japan tour in the 60s, and it just him, he was the guy that would jump up and do the high splash, jump up and touch his toes. He takes the bump over the top rope like the old time giants used to take that bump. The last guy I saw it do it like that was the One Man Gang when he was Crusher Broomfield. But he was so agile and just so impressive looking. It's a shame, that we have none of that left.
He would do cartwheels. Okay. Picture that. Put that in your head. And the move you're talking about where he did that midair split, for just to be clear, like that's the thing that Rocca used to do. And there's pictures of him where he does a split in midair and his feet touch his hands.
Yeah. Rocca didn't weigh 325 or 330,
Right. Forget that. He was doing it maybe closer to 375, 380 and 6'6". I mean, it's an incredible sight. There is some stuff of that era, but it's Japan. In fact, he was on a tour in Japan at the beginning of 1963 when he first got the call to come to Capitol. And there is some footage of that tour out there where he's teaming with Killer Kowalski and he's wrestling Ricky Dozan. And actually, it was Kowalski who helped to make the introduction because Kowalski really got to like him in Japan. They became good friends. And that's also why he was, they were always close. But Kowalski had the connection with Vince because he'd been working for Vince going back to the 50s. So he was able to kind of make that introduction. And then the rest was history. By the summer, he was already the biggest heel they had.
Well, I tell you what, we told him at the start, but we're going to tell him again. The title of the book is Irresistible Force, and the author of the book is Brian Solomon. And Brian, how in the world can people rush to their various devices and order this thing, and when does it come out?
Okay, well, the first thing is for everyone that's asked, it will be available in print, in digital, and in audio. I'm currently recording the audiobook version, so that may take a little bit later to come out.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, that'll take a couple of years. This thing is thick.
I know. It's kind of torture. I've been doing it for days and I'm not even halfway through, and I don't even know how I still have a voice. But the book, the print and the ebook versions, the official publication date is September 30th. You can pre-order it now, absolutely. And you can get it wherever you get books. You can get it on Amazon. That's probably where most people will get it. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, either the store or barnesandnoble.com. There's Books A Million, all the major book chains, or you could even just your local bookstore. And if they don't have it, or they don't plan on getting it, just ask them to order it because it's really going to be available everywhere. You could even go to ECW Press directly and order it there, especially if you're in Canada. That might be the way to go because it'll be domestic instead of ordering it in Canada from the United States.
It's dodgy going across the borders these days. And here's something. Why don't some enterprising person just go to every bookstore in town and tell them to order the book? And then you don't have to come back and buy it, but at least, Brian, you'll sell a lot of books. Maybe you could do that plan.
Why not? Why not? With the Chic book, Blood and Fire, I kept pushing the pre-order so hard that Amazon ran out of copies before the on sale date. And then everyone wanted to kill me. So
Well, no, but now see that they need to be prepared that
Right.
you are a best-selling author.
Well, I hope they do better this time. We'll see.
All right, but everybody knows how to get it now and when to get it and where to get it. And I will say they should get it because, again, there's not a lot of wrestling books that I learn stuff from these days, unfortunately. But yours are always one of them or two of them or however many the fuck you've done. However many there been, I've learned something from them.
Thank you, Jim.
Brian Solomon, Irresistible Force, Gorilla Monsoon. Go out and buy it.
All right, we are back. We are here in the present.
Sounds like we're in the little wedding chapel in Las Vegas. I wonder, are we married to Solomon now?
You know, I got to give him a lot of credit, the research he did. And, you know, there's still so many things you can't find out because there are so many secrets that guys literally went to their death with. And he did as good as he could. I think he did a better job maybe than anyone, very briefly, kind of quickly, but laying out how Vince McMahon Sr. really came to power. And really it was about all the local promoters around him getting behind him.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of names, you know, for people that have always been looking to close the gap on, you know, how did Ray Fabiani move from, you know, wrestling to just opera? You know, and how did Abe Ford get put in place in Boston? A lot of that's kind of laid out here in the story, because the story of Gorilla Monsoon is the story of the WWF in a lot of ways.
Well, and I guess we should have also made the point when I was talking to Brian that the 60s as a formative period for the WWF, they didn't have Boston till later on in the 60s. They
Right.
still had to make a deal at the first part of the decade for Baltimore. And then they got Philadelphia and the Garden, obviously, but the territory was still expanding into what even the modern 70s fans would know as that era of WWF. So Gorilla was instrumental in a lot of those acquisitions and being able to expand the territory.
Yeah, a fascinating book. Again, it is Irresistible Force by Brian R. Solomon. Go to Amazon. We'll have a link we'll put up also when the show goes up. But check it out. Definitely well worth your time. One of the better wrestling biographies out there.
And as he mentioned, he's recording the audio book. And folks, just think, coming up sometime soon, you could have Brian Solomon's dulcet tones in your head for literally dozens of hours straight. Only if you're tied to a chair, but folks, they could be on your Raycon everyday earbuds. And that way you would not even have to deviate or be a deviant from your daily routine. You could do two things at the same time. Listen to Brian Solomon excite you with tales of Gorilla Monsoon and go about taking a shit or making coleslaw. It's completely up to you. Brian, how many things can you do at the same time?
This is a hell of a spot
While
so far. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
While you are wearing the latest version of Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic. They brought them back. It's like the Model T upgraded and improved all over again. Now featuring active noise cancellation. Well, how many things can you do while you're listening to your earbuds?
Oh, just about anything. Almost anything. Not quite everything, but almost there.
Almost there. And well, sometimes it can get you over the hump there.
That's what you need.
It depends on what you're listening to.
And then you just roll downhill.
And just roll with the changes. Folks, you can pair the idea of the active noise cancellation in the new version of the Everyday Earbuds Classic with 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. Your Raycons never have to leave your ears. And as a matter of fact, once you're gone, they'll have to pry them from your cold, dead ears. Nobody's allowed to take away my Raycons. And their audio quality rivals all the big audio brands that you know and love at half the price. So you can literally buy twice the amount of Raycon Everyday Earbuds Classic that you for the same price as these big hoity-toity brands. And that means you can not only listen to them, but you can give them to a loved one or a friend or family member. We've suggested in the past the neighbors. And that way, if you activate the special eavesdrop button while your neighbor is listening to his everyday earbuds, you can hear what's going on in his house.
There is no eavesdrop.
And it's really fun on Friday nights around sexy time.
Let's all keep to ourselves unless invited in. But of course, you can invite the sounds of wonderful sounds into your ear with Raycon.
Yeah, yes, you can. You can do that. What makes them a must-have? I'll tell you what. Because they're iconic, and you can listen to anything you want to listen to and groove to the sounds and move to the groove. And it would behoove you to move to your groove. And right now, before any more occurs, go to Buy Raycon. That's BUYRAYCON.com/JCE. 20% off the fan favorite everyday earbuds classic. I don't know why we even have to say this site anymore. We've been telling you for years now, and everybody seems to be happy with it so far. It's buyraycon.com/JCE. 20% off the classics. And often you don't get to buy a classic at any price, especially a discount. I'm telling you, it's the Model T of earbuds. Come on. You know it, especially just when you press the button and it has the old horn honk.
You can stop
Ooga, ooga. That moves people out of your way on the streets.
Oh, you hear that old sound, Jim? And of course, that sound connotates it's time to let people know in a very serious way because we care about their ear and their ear health.
Yes.
The finest sounds with Raycon, a great deal for the listeners.
Just straight right down the middle. No, 20% off the classics at buyraycon. Damn you. buyraycon.com/JCE. Oh, God. Oh, God.
All right, Raycons. We're big fans of Raycon here. Just about everyone in this house has a pair. But Jim,
well, I'll tell you what, not everybody in the house. Well, I guess a pair of something. I was going to say you got both genders in that house there, but there's a pair to be found either top or bottom.
Jim, speaking of a pair, I understand there's more wrestling.
Have you got a square to spare? Just one square to spare?
You know, she's a billionaire.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
No, Jamie. Is it Jamie Gertz? Is that her name? The woman.
What?
The woman who played Spare to Square. Woman or whatever.
No, not you mean Julia Louis-Dreyfus that starred on the show for 10 years is not a billionaire, but the anonymous woman in the stall next to her handing her a piece of toilet paper is a billionaire?
I believe so, yeah.
Well, do more than believe now. You got to prove that shit right now. Start Googling.
Hold on.
I refuse to believe
I've got to prove that
you can make $1 billion out of the residuals of handing somebody some shit paper.
Jamie Gertz. I was right. 59 years old, out of Chicago. Like I'm bringing her out to the ring. Out of Chicago!
Well done!
Let's see. Going through her history. She was, of course, in... What was the name of that movie with Kevin Bacon where he rides his bike? Quicksilver. That one.
I don't fucking know.
Oh, it was an awful movie. I really used to
Has it been on Turner Classic? That's really the only place I go.
Not yet. She's married to a private equity investor.
Oh.
They're members of an investment group which purchased the Milwaukee Brewers. And they are the #1 donor to charity of any celebrity.
But basically what you say is she didn't make $1 billion. She married $1 billion.
See, I thought she also started like a business too, after...
Well, some kind of monkey business.
I don't know, but that's why she stopped acting so much, I believe.
Well, wouldn't you?
I don't know if you really love it. If you really love it, could there be a billionaire wrestler?
No. No. Why take chances on breaking your fucking neck? You got $1 billion.
See, that'd be a good gimmick if there's a billionaire wrestler, but you never get to see him wrestle. Every time he gets near the ring, like one of his dad's henchmen try to grab him. And then just fight around ringside and he leaves. You never actually.
Well, now you're doing Tony Khan's reality show.
Well, no, his dad's henchmen are off every Wednesday. It seems.
His dad's henchmen are off, all right. Good Lord, I think Cadbury needs to rein him in. That may be a natural segue to this week's AEW Dynamite was so ridiculous that I'm going to talk about a couple of segments just to illustrate some of the things that they're not going to be able to control in the future that are getting out of hand. But there was some controversy over the week about the arena that they were in this week. Now, they've been running the smaller buildings, and we said, yes, they should do that, because when they were in the NBA arenas with 3,000 people, it looked sad, and it was a needless expense of whatever. And even though I've, mentioned the Brady Music Center in Cincinnati or whatever in a tongue-in-cheek fashion the other day, at least those places look still professional. It's the kind of like the Hammerstein Ballroom effect in New York with the cool architecture. You can get something out of a lot of these places, right? But now they've started, what is it, a 2-week residency in the historic 2300 Arena in Philadelphia. And boy, howdy, this don't do them any favors, because I'm sorry for the people that, in that part of the country that somehow have the fond memories of the ECW Arena, which is what this is. But not only does it, now that it's been renovated 15 times, it still looks like shit on camera. It's low rent. It's like they're in a warehouse. That building is the biggest toilet that I've ever worked in. And imagine how much fucking ground, Brian, that takes in.
Yeah. No, you've been in a lot of Philadelphia.
No, I've been in a lot of fucking toilets. Not but all over the world. But either it was a shitty facility in terms of being out in the middle of nowhere, or horrible Houma, Louisiana, with a shitty locker room in the middle of a mud field, or, sometimes the facility might be okay, but goddamn, the neighborhood is the shits. I remember for Ring of Honor years ago, I was at the fairgrounds in Detroit, which didn't seem to be a flourishing location. But for a combination of the worst neighborhood you've ever been in a major city and the biggest shithole of a building, this one is it. And I don't know what for some people, the magic is about the thing. You were there before I was. You were there in the 90s.
Well, you were there in the 90s too, but I was there before you, yes.
Well, they snuck me in and out, and I wasn't there long. But I spent 12 hours a fucking day there numerous times in 2009 and 2010 when Ring of Honor was doing that HDNet show. And the reason why I said that the building caused some controversy this past week is because they had the union picketing the building and picketing AEW for the production that they're doing there, for not holding up union standards or whatever. More on that in a minute. But that's the thing. Have you been in the locker room area of that building?
I have not.
The guy that owned that place, or owned it, or ran it, or whatever, the guy that was doing stuff there, I remember his name was Roger, right? They always talk Roger. Ask Roger. And in that building, they were just doing, you can't say renovations, that maybe remodel, but like the locker room walls were just wallboard put up on studs at his fancy. If he wanted to create a new wall, one time I went in there was a goddamn window in the room. There hadn't been a window before, but it looked out onto a goddamn big empty fucking room with nothing in it. As whether they're changing things. And there was a stairway that went to nowhere. And there was like 2 toilets in the entire locker room area. Sometimes they all didn't work. But the point being, Roger would just build this shit, these hallways to nowhere. When he had an idea, there was no code enforcement. There was no permits done like you have to do at a big city. He was just doing this shit. So I can easily believe that There is no chance that they have ever had union labor on a wrestling show that aired from that building before. The ECW was paying a union or all these other indies and these hardcore groups. So I'm not championing Tony Khan's cause, but if they're going to pick at him just because they know he's got some money, but in this dump that seats 850 people, if nobody else has been using this union labor, why should he? I guess that is what the statement that I'm making first and foremost. You see what I'm saying, Brian?
I do. It seats 1,300. Why didn't they pick it when WWE ran there with NXT?
Well, and also, who said it seats 1,300? Did you see 1,300 people there? And it was packed because it's a big fucking room with chairs on the floor. I don't believe 1,300 people.
Well, I'll tell you, the bleachers are less packed now than they were then.
Did you even see bleachers? Or is it all just flat? I remember Paul had bleachers across from the deal, but I did.
Yeah,
did I miss bleachers?
They had bleachers on this week's Dynamite.
Well, maybe the bleach got in my eyes. But that's the point, is between that and the neighborhood. And again, you can tell me probably better than I know why the fuck that building is there in that place, but it sits under an interstate. When you're out in the back parking lot where guys would find used syringes and condoms in the parking lot inside the barbed wire fence, you're standing underneath the interstate with goddamn semi trucks going over the top of you. And it was next to the road that came to the building was gravel. It wasn't paved. And it was next to a outlet store of some description that sold men's suit jackets with 2 buttons on one side and 3 buttonholes on the other side. And I don't know, it would.
Johan's office was over there too.
Well, would this whole building or complex of buildings have been condemned years ago if not for people continuing to run wrestling events in this building?
No. Well, yeah, remember, they had a pretty successful midnight bingo operation going there for a while.
I forgot about the bingo.
No, I mean, I'm serious. I was talking to someone recently about it, and they said, yeah, I remember leaving ECW. I never even got to see this. I remember leaving the ECW arena, there'd be just a line of like old women waiting to get in. You know, this is late at night.
What old woman? What old woman would want to go there in the dark?
Well, bingo. I mean, bingo's a big draw.
Jesus Christ. So is fucking attempted murder on the streets. Anyway, the point is, if AEW, I don't think they were mistreating anybody any worse than any of the other fucking promotions that have run that building, and there's many of them that have. But if they want a nice warehouse that's been customized for a very little amount of money, they ought to call the new OVW owners over in West Faversham and rent the Davis Arena. It looks better on TV than this thing did. Anyway, should we start talking about the show?
Okay, that was the running down of Philadelphia and the ECW arena, or the 2300 arena.
I didn't say anything bad about Philadelphia, although it has never held the same place in my heart since they closed all those Ribbit locations. But no, this building.
No, it's a historic place. So they say if you close your eyes and squint in the right light, you could see Gino Moore letting air out of tires. The ghost of Gino Moore.
Yeah, a tornado came through there last month. It did over $3 million worth of improvements.
Hey, I'm sure you're going to bring it up during the review, but you know, we're talking about the building and the arena. The one, I actually didn't mind the look. I liked it. But again, I'm sentimental towards early to mid 90s ECW, and I was there for some of it.
Lord.
But the part
that jerks at my heartstrings.
The part that I thought looked the worst was Claudio's entrance, when you realize that the crew is all just set up under the overpass.
Yes. That's they wouldn't even, because of the Dick the Boozer's, ego, and they have to do their entrance. They had to go backstage, and there is no backstage. It's just piles of junk and a fucking parking lot. But Anyhow, let's get to what went wrong in the ring. Here is a problem that they're developing, and it's going to happen next week in Philly, and maybe it won't spread too much, but FTR comes out. And by the way, did you see Cash get in the face of the 18-year-old guy with the FedEx outfit on or whatever?
They've been doing this a lot lately. I don't know if you've noticed it, but they've been doing this specific thing a lot lately.
Well, they shouldn't do it in Philadelphia. And especially, they really shouldn't do it at all, because here's the thing. Everybody's smart now. They know you can't touch them. You're not Roger Jackson. You can't touch them. But even in the days, the Terry Funks, the heels that would go out and challenge fans, in effect, and bow up at them, Terry taught me that he made it broader. Every once in a while, if somebody looked like that he had gotten over, it was something he said, Terry'd get up in the guy's face and he could back him down. That was a long time ago and a different guy. As a general rule, yell at the crowd as a broad collective rather than getting one guy's face because he didn't back down. Cash has to stay there jawing. The guy's not going to back down from him because he knows he can sue Cash if Cash does anything. And Cash knows he can't do anything, but he thinks he's trying to fucking buffalo this guy. So he just got told off by a teenage FedEx driver. Just yell at him broadly. Don't pick one out and get in the face because you ain't going to win, and then you just look foolish.
And it's happened a few times with FTR recently. There was one time where it may have been Cash where like they drew back like they were going to hit. Obviously, they weren't going to throw a punch, but it was just to get the person to flinch, and they didn't flinch. They stood there with their drink in their hand, and then this time the guy was blowing kisses.
Yeah.
So if these are the reactions you're getting as a heel, stop doing this.
Stop doing these things. So then they got in the ring, and Dax was going to start talking, but the microphone was not feeding the PA. It was feeding television. We could hear when he would take his hand and bang on it. We could hear those things, but he couldn't hear himself on the PA, so he thought the mic was dead. So he says it's not working. They hand him a second one, but it's the same thing because it's not the problem with the microphones. It's the problem with the fucking audio idiot in the truck. And it's the same thing. We could hear everything. We're saying it's not working. And then he got bleeped for, I guess, said, give me a fucking microphone that works right, whatever. Finally, they were feeding the PA. Here's the problem. They start trying to cut the promo. They were pinned in the tag team title match at the pay-per-view by the Illegal Man. And they're going to browbeat Paul Turner, the referee, about it and cross-examine him about it. And then tell him they want him to reverse the decision and give them the belts. But the people are just hooting him down and they're chanting, shut the fuck up. All that shit. By the way, they're on the Turner Networks. There was no TNT when I was part of the creative for the wrestling program on the Turner Network, but we would get memos about language and nobody ever said fuck. But they have just quit trying to censor the chants from these crowds, and they're in Philadelphia. Need I say more? The same 2-hour program, what were there, 40, 50, 60 fucks from all the people chanting, shut the fuck up. And they're just letting it, they've given up. If somebody had said fuck, in 1990, I believe they would have taken the program off the air. But the point is, they're chanting shut the fuck up because A, they're not interested in this angle or these people. B, they're a wise-ass crowd, the most dedicated, devoted, hardcore, indie-minded crowd that's going to come to the 2300 toilet in Philadelphia. And they're just hijacking the show, and that is the meaning of it, hijacking the show. You can't get the fucking it's throwing the talent off. Nobody listens, so that then they need to be reacting to what the talent is saying and doing in the ring, and instead they're just taking off on their own, and we don't want to hear it. If they were interested in the angles and the personalities, they would listen. But instead, it's more and more of the Dominic Mysterio thing where it's fun for us to just shit on you, and we don't really care what you're saying to listen to it anyway. But it's happening on this program, not just here, but to like 3 or 4 different fucking people whenever they start talking. And if the people aren't listening, you can't get your points across. And then the stories are bad enough to begin with. Don't make them any harder to understand. Do you see the point I'm making?
I do.
And I don't know how they're going to get out of this. And also, Dax is the one that cross-examined Paul Turner. There's a manager for that. Because Dax's strong point of his working or his talking is not his talking. It's his working. But then Stokely fires up and starts browbeating Paul Turner when he said the decision is final. But then the fans are chanting on their own, no hose, no hose. Because, they've done the comedy where Stokely don't get no hose. But they're not listening to what he's doing. And he's trying to do a deal with Paul Turner where he gives Paul the chest finger and Paul gives it back to him. And FTR gets in the middle, but the people had not paid any attention. Here comes Edge's music. And he comes out, and now they like that because they like him. But he comes out alone. He's looking around. There's no Christian Cage. And then suddenly in the ring, Cage appears from behind and gives Stokely his finish, the unprettier, or whatever they call it these days. The manager gets hit first. So he lays Stokely out, and then the FTR turns around and Edge and Christian beat them up. And then here come the referees and 15 security guys. They have a big pull apart. Every outlaw indie guy in Philadelphia was booked that had a black shirt. And they got FTR to the entranceway, and Stokely's all shook up. And Christian and Edge cut the promo and still managed to do some comedy because Christian is going to say, your fathers, you have fathers. And Edge is like, oh, don't do that. And then the fans want him to do it. Okay, do it. And your fathers are dead. And they announce a tag team match for All Out in Toronto. But nobody listened to the majority of what went on there. They just amused themselves. And out of the 2 teams that Edge and Christian could face, we said it took the new off of them teaming up to go against Luchasaurus and originally it was supposed to be Nick Plain and Pip Sabian. It should have been in Toronto. It should have been against FTR. And if they had to get the belts off the Hurt Business, then FTR should have been the champions. Instead of this goofy fucking Brody King and Brodito or whatever the fuck. But the point is, the fans are just taking over because all they're there to see is people break furniture, and they're not listening to any of the guys try to set up any of the stories. Would they have done this to the CM Punks, the Drew McIntyres, the Roman Reigns, the Paul Heymans, the Braun Breakers, even the main stars in the industry? No, they're interested. They might want to boo what they're saying, but they want to hear it. With this, they've already said, this shit ain't going to be worth a shit anyway. Let's just have fun. Do you think I'm overstating this?
Well, no, I mean, you're the expert. I would listen to you before I listen to me. I think you're right about the fact that the fans, I mean, Stokely's just a part of the thing now like Tully was. He's like a comedy Tully.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to want to see him get his ass kicked. He's already gotten his ass kicked numerous times. As far as Dax here, maybe it was...
Wait a minute, can you imagine, hold that thought, but can you imagine if we'd pitched a finish to Dusty, much less him giving us one like this, where the Midnight Express is in the ring. We beat the job guys, and then here comes Dusty, and he knocks me out first. What the fuck in the world?
No, he has to get to you, which gives Bobby a chance to take a great bump, which is always nice.
There you go. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead, Dax.
But, I agree Dax's strong point ain't on the mic. However, I thought maybe it was because of the frustration with the mic issue and just kind of yelling it out and not hearing himself back right. I thought he had more intensity in whatever he was yelling at the referee here than anything else. I thought it was one of his best moments on the mic, actually.
Well, but also he was trying to be heard over, a lot of times people that weren't fucking listening.
He sounded like someone who didn't practice what he was going to say, someone who was trying to just say something. I actually like that.
But that's the thing, is that they've put the cart before the horse, in that the manager should be the one to lay out the grievance. Then the wrestler should be the one to back it up and fucking intimidate the fucking guy who's not cooperating with the manager. And then when the baby face comes out, then the fucking wrestlers go to the baby faces and they fucking fight them, and maybe, as you said, get through them to get to the manager, but not completely, because that's the tease to continue this. Because in a perfect world, the manager has caused them, the baby faces, endless strife, caused them to lose, caused them to get beat, caused them to get hurt, whatever, so that's the prize that they get in the claw machine when they finally get a hold of him. But this is all goddamn cattywampers.
And to me, there was again, I lost myself a little bit in the moment because I used to be in that building. It's a different crew of people, but Philadelphia stays Philadelphia. Philadelphia never changes. And I was enjoying the hell out of those fans just doing what they always do. But what do you think? I mean, I guess you kind of said, I was going to say, what do you think of the setup to FTR versus Edge and Christian?
Well, that's the thing. They shouldn't have already had a match together, Edge and Christian, against these other two that for all the reasons it was things that were wrong with it that we talked about when we reviewed it, that their first match back as a team, Edge and Christian, they still have to put over the Lizard as being somewhat of a force because the other guy broke his foot and blah, blah, blah. They should have done some type of focused angle to Edge and Christian versus FTR, where at least FTR can do the things in the ring to make the focus on Edge and Christian, rather than them having to be the veterans trying to get these greenhorns over. And in Toronto, their hometown, and their career comes full circle. That could have been something that was promoted. You've taken a lot of the icing off the cake and made it less palatable by having this false start and crummy match in Wembley. But nevertheless, that's my opinion. Or not Wembley, but England. Or good old Wembley, England. Right down the road from West Faversham. You want to move on here, Brian?
We must.
We must, because Dick the Boozer faced all 187 pounds of Danny Garcia. They could get away with announcing him as 200, but they just have to slap you in the face with there's nothing about this guy that's intimidating in any fashion. And at least you notice that Boozer, he walked through the back in the hallway, but not off the street, because I assume he was scared of being mugged in that neighborhood. But after almost 20 minutes of this with the entrances and everything, Moxley kicked out of a pile driver. And then Garcia grabbed Moxley's legs and was stepping through like he was going to get him in a sharpshooter or something. And were you even paying attention to this? Did you see how he pinned him, how Moxley pinned Garcia?
Yeah, I saw.
He small packaged himself.
Talent.
Garcia steps through Moxley's legs like he's going to set up a figure four or a sharpshooter or something where he's going to turn, and they're trying to do the finish where when the guy starts turning, the other guy small packages him. But he's small. Garcia small packaged himself. He just rolled down and tucked his head under and put his shoulders down without Moxley moving or doing anything. And then when his shoulders were already down, then Moxley hooked the head because it was right next to him. 1, 2, 3. And even the announcers, you could hear the announcers go, like they couldn't hold their reaction of what the fuck did he just do? And then said, oh, Moxley capitalized. Yeah, he noticed the guy had just decided to pin himself right next to him and took advantage of it.
Capitalized, yeah.
20 minutes to get there.
I give Daniel Garcia credit. He doesn't age. He still looks like a 22-year-old skinny kid who came in. You're thinking, oh, he'll fill out one day. It hasn't happened. And
look at the difference in Kyle. Old Kyle Felcher.
He takes the right vitamins too.
Well, but he's tanned and he's had some gear made. He's made an attempt at a gimmick. And here comes Garcia looking like Mope Face.
Anyway, there was a post-match, Jim. I understand.
Yes, there was, because there was Wheeler useless in the middle of the ring. With that, we'll talk about Mope Face and somebody that looks like they ought to be goddamn parking cars. He's in just, I can't even call him street clothes. He's just in frump clothes. And he's the one who gets on the microphone and said Moxley is not going to fight Darby Allin, while Moxley and Garcia were down on the floor arguing with each other, and they were clearly wanting us to see it and getting camera shots of it. And then they went to break, and when they came back from break, Wheeler was still in the ring with the microphone. And again, he starts doing a promo. I used to do ring crew here as a teenager. And the fans are just, shut the fuck up. And it's the same thing. He's trying to set up this story of his background there and how he's come so far and whatever. But he looks like a no boy, a nobody, or a no boy, possibly, rather than a young boy. New Japan had young boys, but he's a no boy. The fans don't care. The material makes no sense and is not really interesting, and they're just chanting over him. And then the lights go out and the hook signal goes up on the roof of the warehouse. And that's new music, right? It was a very...
It is. I liked it.
Whatever the word was, very new sounding. Hook walks out to the ring, gets a choke on this fucking guy, then lets it go, then punches him and leaves. And everybody... That was pretty much it, wasn't it? Did you see more? Did I miss something?
Did I see more? Are you talking about the career of Hook? Or are you talking about this specific thing?
Well, then no, the specific thing here, nobody was, yes, they reacted to, oh, it's Hook, but it wasn't like, oh my God, it's Hook. He walked out there. He got a choke on the guy. He let the choke go. He hit the ropes. He punched him. The guy that's been beaten by everybody else takes a fucking bump. And he walked out of the building. I don't know that they found a needle mover here.
Let's just hope it leads to Hook versus Mox. That could be an all-time classic.
Good God.
It's Philadelphia. It's where Taz was a star. Taz is on commentary. They've been building up or showing vignettes for the return of Hook. They've got new music ready to go. Again, he's another one of these guys.
Just because the Rotary Club was recognizing Nick Goulas doesn't mean that George has to be praised and feted as well.
Hook's been there for like 5 years now. Same question as Daniel Garcia. Wheeler Yuta, at least they've let him grow his hair and he just gets beat up not as just a generic job guy, but as Moxley's job guy. But Hook, has there been any growth? Has there been any change? You still look at him like, oh, he has potential. Well, how long does that work for? He's been there forever now.
Well, he's back.
All right, we'll see what happens.
All righty. Levitating past, MJF had a pre-taped interview from Forbidden Door after his match where he narrated the way that he got screwed over with B-roll. And again, it's just he badly needs a change of scenery and some people to interact with that are in any way interesting. And speaking of people who are, well, they're in one way, some of these people are interesting, but not in a way that I'd want to watch them for that long. Penelope Pitstop and Megan Brain wrestled Chris Statlander and Harley Cameron. They did that. You happen to know who won, Brian?
I believe Megan and Penelope won.
Well, good for them. And then we were at 9:00. I'm telling you, these shows are fucking dreary. I'm zipping. Mercedes Moon did an in-ring promo. They set up the balloons, the flowers, a table with all of her 9 belts. She has now got 9 of the outlaw indie girl promotion belts around the world that Tony has either bought or negotiated for her. And she thinks it's a big fucking deal. And as a matter of fact, some of these fans think it's a big fucking deal, overlooking the fact that it's a goddamn ridiculous fucking deal because none of these belts have ever been heard of before, but they look nice. She was wearing a stripper outfit or something she may have picked up on South Street. She's got the 9 phony belts, and her promo is Ultimo Dragon had 10 belts. What the? How old is she? Wasn't that 30 years ago? And did anybody give a shit then? Did Ultimo Dragon's 10 belts ever get him a featured spot in any way in the WCW hierarchy?
Well, he was working in WCW. It didn't really boost him.
Yeah, he was working his ass off on TV, getting the shit kicked out of him.
It was a big deal in Japan, of course, where there are lots of photos of him with his lots of belts and the lots of magazines they used to have.
How many belts did Nash and Hall and Hogan have when they were working 1/10 as much and fucking making 10 times as much? But this was the 9:00 hour, and it was 3 or 4 minutes because there was nothing for her to say that was any new. Just, I'm going to get 10 belts and break the record or whatever the fuck. It lasted 3 or 4 minutes. She did the stripper dance again, and off she went. Whew. Mark Briscoe couldn't be there because he had a new baby. Is that 10? He's had a lot of kids. Bless those Briscoes. But, we love Mark Briscoe, but he even said in this promo, he's talking about MJF. It was a good promo as always, but he even said, people say I never win the big one. You know what? Because you never win the big one. We'd love to see him win the big one, but I think a lot of people have quit waiting. Did you see the 8-man tag team confrontation, Brian? The all-star 8-man tag team cataclysmic fucking Zabada?
I didn't watch the entirety of the match. I saw the beginning, the setup for it. I saw the ending of it and a few points in the middle, but this was a big ball of I don't give a shit, so I did the best I could. I was more intrigued by I was more intrigued by the intro, the setup there, the follow-up to the big return of Wardlow.
Well, there's the thing is that people say that AEW doesn't, their characters, their talent don't grow and expand and metamorphosize and everything. Well, Wardlow, a mere 4 or 5 years ago, he was just a flunky standing in a corner while all the other guys got all the attention. And now here today in 2025, he's a flunky standing in the corner while the other guys get all the attention. It was an 8-man tag team match, playa, that Tony Khan loves with Oblada, the worst Japanese wrestler in history, Josh Alexander, Take a Shit, he's back, and our friend Frank Mortis, with Don in, of course, in his normal position, talking instead of managing, and Wardlow hanging around as a stooge in case anybody needed anything. They debut this guy by beating up a goddamn manager. Why are all the managers getting beat up? But all the damage had been done, and then he comes in and does practically nothing on a pay-per-view, and then follows up on the TV afterwards by doing completely nothing. How was this worth waiting 2 years for?
It wasn't. He just came out there and stood there and laughed alongside Don Callis as other people came out to wrestle.
Which, by the way, was Kevin Knight, Hong Kong Phooey, Bandito, and Burger King. And then with entrances again, 15 minutes. And then what's indicative of this whole program, Josh Alexander, the heel, outsmarted Spitball, the babyface, avoided his offensive move and pinned him clean 1, 2, 3.
Is that the first time we've seen him pin someone?
I don't know, but I don't think he's won anything yet. But how in the world does that finish get by multiple heads? How in the world do they think, wait, how does the babyface go, wait a minute, I'm going to try to do my fancy shit and you're just going to outsmart me and beat me 1, 2, 3? Then why are you the heel? Why aren't you the babyface? What the...
Well, obviously there's no one involved.
Anyway.
Obviously there was no one involved in that match or producing that match who understood that. That's the problem.
Or maybe they just didn't care because it doesn't make any sense anyway. None of the rest of it. So, but then we got to Hangnail Adam Page. He did an in-ring promo as usual in his ill humor. He appears very dyspeptic, never smiles. He's always frowny and smile upside downy. He thanked Ospreay for all that he's done for him and the company, and we'll miss you, and got the fans to chant for Ospreay a little bit. And then he started in on MJF, and that's where I said, God, this makes the Impact Zone at Universal look like Madison Square Garden, because he's supposedly a world champion of something, and with the spectacle that the WWE is presenting these days, he's in this fucking barn in Philly. And then here comes Don Fallis's music again. And at least they were listening to Page, but now that he comes out, Don, he's doing the promo in the entranceway, and the fans are back to shut the fuck up. And it's the same shit. They don't want to listen. They don't care. They want to just do what amuses them. And Don wants the title back in the family. So here comes Lance Archer, Josh Alexander, Chia, and Rocky Romero. And they're all, so here's a bunch of middle card fucking heels that have come out, and Page tackles all of them. And then they start beating Page up. And the middle card heels are beating up the world champion until guess who saves him? Spitball and Kevin Knight. So now he's got preliminary middle card underneath baby faces coming to save the world champion. And then Rocky Romero stops them with a police baton that Don just happens to have in his pocket. And then Kenny's music plays. And Kenny comes out and clears the ring. And he and Page do some really shitty looking choreography with Lance Archer that didn't materialize like I'm sure they wanted it to. And then the heels ran off. So again, they need a world champion that's also the top guy in the company. Except it can't be Kenny now because he's part-time at best because of his physical condition. It can't be Ospreay
Yeah, part-time at best, and when he is there, you probably have to put him in a tag team or something so he doesn't have to do everything.
Right. Can't be Osprey because he's about to get surgery. Can't be Swerve because he's about to get surgery.
He had his meniscus done. I just saw that.
Which is a fancy word for cartilage, but it's still going to be a couple months before he can do shit that he should be normally does. So they can't have a Star as their babyface world champion because they don't have any.
Maybe they could bring back Wardlow as a babyface. Oh, wait.
He's managing the middle card heels. We don't have time for him.
He's with the manager. He's not even the manager. He's just with the manager.
Well, that's true. And yeah, he's stooging for. So then they had a match for the 6-man tag team title with Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Shapoopy against Ricochet, and his stooges are Tia Leone and Bishop Sheen. I should use his full name, Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. Look it up, kids. It's hilarious. And the babyfaces won and left. And then the Hurt Syndicate's music played. And out came Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin and got in a fight in the aisleway with Ricochet stooges while Ricochet was selling in the ring. They fought these two in a big 4-way and fought to the back with nobody really gaining an advantage. Did I miss something? Were they involved in potentially causing the anything to go on here tonight? Yeah. They were at the pay-per-view, right?
Yeah, they came out as mascots in New Japan, like jackets and everything with masks on, and they beat up or they didn't even really beat them up. They just kind of got them to fight with them away from the ring.
Yeah, they fought off.
Yeah.
But why if these guys had this whole, the Hurt Syndicate are heels, so why did they wait to come out to fight these other guys that cost them the belts while the other match was going on when everybody else just does whatever they want to do?
Well, the other thing too was right before the finish, it was really brief and it wasn't shot well, and I did not go back to watch it, and I meant to. Some guy jumps up and hits one of the heels, and Excalibur goes, "Oh, it's MVP!" And then he was gone, and I didn't even see him.
What?
Yeah, you didn't see that part? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Because MVP didn't come out with...
No, he did not.
Oh, God damn it. Anyway, so now we gotta watch Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin work with the two undercard Samoan-looking fellas. All righty.
Yeah. Again, you need top baby faces right now. Do something. Just do something else. Tony, whatever you're thinking, do the opposite.
Well, speaking of the opposite, they finished this program up, and I will finish this review up. It was going to be a Falls Count Anywhere match with Claudio Castagnoli and Darby Allin. So they show Claudio walking through the backstage area of this hovel, and suddenly Darby dives off the top of a fucking mobile home trailer onto Claudio. And then Claudio goes and puts him in a shopping cart and pushes him into a bunch of chairs, and then picks him up and body slams him through a flat screen TV stretched out amongst two chairs with a concrete floor underneath. Then they get back up and they fight into the arena where they are going to start having the Falls Count Anywhere match. And Darby is already up doing dives, and he climbs a pillar 20 feet and does a coffin drop off the pillar 45 seconds after he was slammed through the flat screen TV. And I say, you know what? Why? I'm done. I turned it off. I don't know, and I don't fucking care. Did they kill him or did he survive?
Once again, Darby Allin survives. Darby Allin wins the match. I like when the brawl started outside and you saw those workers in the back sitting there. No one got up. No one looked concerned. They just looked over at this happening.
And now you about workers, you mean actual people working there at the building, not the other wrestler, the workers.
Yeah. Who? I mean, these were just like,
Well, I know you. I know you trained at Knox Pro Wrestling, so I don't know your terminology. The popcorn guy is not scared of this shit.
Well, we talk about they need top baby faces. They do have Darby, who seems to not only take a beating, but want to take a beating. They're doing these things to him because he's asking them to do these things to him.
I know. And actually, they are so far in the soup right now that it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for Darby to be their top baby face of world champion. But obviously, for a short period of time until they can set something else up, because people like him. He has the weird charisma, even though he's a fucking moron. And short term, yay, but to carry a company, no. To be featured in the main events of pay-per-views with different type of opponents, especially with the slim pickings on that roster, no, not over a long period of time. You need a guy that looks better than that. I'm sorry. Osprey. I'm not talking about Lex Luger. I'm talking about Osprey. Wouldn't be unacceptable, cosmetically unpleasing, but not fucking Darby, because then you've limited yourself to looking like a fucking niche level indie.
Well, of course, Jim, Orange Cassidy is also due to return anytime now.
Oh, God. No, don't tell me that. This show can't get any worse. Oh, wait a minute. I hear Robert Fuller now telling Jarrett, oh, yes, it can.
Orange Cassidy due to return. Chris Jericho looking for a contract somewhere.
Somewhere else.
Anywhere. Anyone who will pay. He will be there. But that was AEW
But that was
Dynamite.
the program, the Dynamite episode. Brian, do you have any closing thoughts on last Wednesday's Dynamite?
Again, I actually thought one of the positives was the look, and you hated it completely.
Yeah.
I thought it looked all right. I like the energy of that crowd. It's like if the NXT crowd was just evil. That's like what the Philadelphia crowd is. I love it. And we'll see, you pointed out all the big problems with like every angle they did, let alone matches or pinfalls or how they happened or who pinned who or what. There's no one there. I mean, I hate to reference the Jake Hager interview. It's not like he's the greatest source in the world. But there's like no one there, as he talked about, who can talk Tony off being Tony. And Tony thinks he has the instincts. He said that in his own interview. The big thing he had to do was trust his instincts and go with his instincts. He thinks he has instincts. He thinks he understands.
I think his instincts stink.
He thinks he understands booking philosophy because he watched a lot of angles on tapes. But the problems with AEW always remain the same problems, and it's Tony Khan. That's why WWE's kicking the shit out of him. And it's going to be a full house pretty soon. But the problem is Tony, and Tony doesn't see that. Tony thinks that he's like the biggest asset of AEW.
Well, I think he should stop after the first three letters. See, now you didn't get that, did you?
I got that. That was Dynamite. You got that too.
Well, before we talk about whether anybody watched this thing or not, Brian, what in the world is going on in the world of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, where people do indeed listen to the programs?
That's right. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Of course, each and every day, get the wrestling news for free. Your morning wrestling newscast with more to come. TheWrestlingNews.com directly, or look for The Wrestling News wherever you find your favorite podcast. No clickbait. No paywall, just the wrestling news. Want to make mention, Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam, a look at 40 years ago in Mid-South Wrestling, 1985. Find out about this very, very important year for Mid-South. It was kind of the changing of the guard that year. McAdamPod.com, wherever you find your favorite podcast, look for Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! Hear all your sound effects today. Go through the archive, 605pod.com, wherever you find your favorite podcast, The Mothership.
Well, Mother, where are we at on the ratings? I said they were an immovable object at the top of the program. Did they move from last week, where they were down in the dregs of the dumpster, down below 600,000? It's looking bad. The end is near. The sky is falling. What's going on this week?
Well, Jim, the ratings are in AEW Dynamite, August 27th, 2025, on TBS from 8 to 10:08 p.m. On average, watched by 585,000 viewers.
Ouch.
A .13 in the key demo, 18 to 49, which is I believe it's the all-time low. No, it says lowest viewership for Dynamite since March 5th. I'm going by WrestleNomics here, but I thought it was the all-time low.
Oh no, they've been lower
In the key
but
demo.
it's pretty low.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but 585.
It's mighty low.
585, Jim.
Well, thank you very much. 585. I'll see you that and raise you 600. No, they're still below 600, but where now is this one of those shows that started with a promising fashion and then just plummeted from there? Or is this one of those shows where it was the diehard fans that kind of started and stayed there from beginning to end?
And again, the key demo number lower than it's been. Let's go to the quarterly numbers, the quarterly hour breakdown, the quarters here. These are compiled by WrestleNomics. Quarter 1, 8 to 8:15 p.m. The FTR Adam Copeland live angle and the Darby Allin promo, 638,000 viewers.
Gee, now last week they had a wonderful first quarter, didn't they? And then things started, or am I thinking the week before? Because that's pretty puny for the first quarter, 638,000. They used to not fall below 600. Now that's where they're starting.
And again, 166,000 in the key demo. That's a low for the start of the show. Quarter 2, 8:15 to 8:30 p.m. Jon Moxley versus Daniel Garcia with picture-in-picture, 610,000 viewers.
So again, this is one of those weeks where they can look positively that they didn't lose 100,000 viewers in the first 15 minutes like they often do. They just started real low and only lost 28.
Well, we roll into quarter 3, 8:30 to 8:45 p.m. The continuation of Moxley versus Garcia, the post-match with the Death Riders and Matt Menard, an ad break, the Wheeler Yuta Hook live angle, the MJF tape promo, and the start of Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford versus Harley Cameron and Chris Statlander, 622,000 viewers.
Good Lord, they actually picked up 12,000. So this is one of those episodes where only the sickos decided to pop in, and they're going to stick with it until almost the bitter end. I can see that now.
Well, we go to the bitter quarter 4, 8:45 to 9 p.m. The continuation of Bayne and Ford versus Cameron and Statlander with picture-in-picture. The post-match with Willow Nightingale, an ad break, and the Mercedes Moné live promo, 553,000 viewers.
Oh,
150,000 in the key demo. That's the low of the show.
geez, oh, Pete. Mercedes made them all moan. But what about the top of the hour, Brian? The big 9 o'clock hour.
We go to the big 9 o'clock hour, 9 to 9:15 p.m., quarter 5. Mark Briscoe's backstage promo, Don Callis' live promo, and Brodito and Jet Speed versus the Don Callis family with picture-in-picture, 591,000 viewers.
Good God. So once that Mercedes was out of there, they figured it's safe to come back. And that's 38,000 to the good. Because they didn't have the Bucks out here this week to, challenge Mercedes for ratings tanking dominance.
Well, let's see if the good continues, Jim. We go to quarter 6, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m. The continuation of Brodito and Jet Speed versus the Callis family. An ad break. The Adam Page Callis family live angle. 566,000 viewers.
Okay, now we're down to almost the Mercedes low period, and I'm predicting a steady little drop off from here. What do you think?
I think we go to quarter 7, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. The continuation of the Page and Callis family live angle with the Kenny Omega return. Tony Storm and Mina Shirakawa and Athena's promo. And the start of the Ops versus the Gates of Agony and Ricochet with picture-in-picture. 549,000 viewers.
Now we're at our low. How much lower can we go?
Well, we go to quarter 8, 9:45 to 10 p.m. We have a 6-minute overrun. Continuation of the previous 6-man tag match. An ad break. And Claudio Castagnoli versus Darby Allin with picture-in-picture. 572,000 viewers.
Aha!
6-minute overrun, continuation of the match, and the post-match with the Death Riders. 550,000 viewers.
Poor things. They just bail out at the end quickly. So the Darby factor got them an extra 23,000 people there at the end. Well, that ain't bad at all. Wow. If year over year, they can't get the picture that they're just doing the same shit with the same people or the same kind of shit with people that look the same. And every year they lose another 100,000 people off their average. Well, there you go.
Well, there they go. I know Tony says everything's up year over year, but this is pretty down. And
his ego, his dosage, many things are up.
The best thing he has going for him in terms of ratings is the fact that no one knows the max ratings. No one can confirm nor deny any of the numbers out there. And all he can do is shrug and say, hey, I don't know anything either. That's all I know. But that's AEW Dynamite.
And that's hell if I know. But I'll tell you what, folks, we're coming back in just a few days there's some kind of WWE pay-per-view going to go on, and we'll have some other things to talk about as well on the drive-thru, Brian, your program. So I'm blaming you. But if you have no more questions, Brian, you're free to leave. And so are the Cult of Cornette members, folks. We'll see you soon on the drive-thru next week on The Experience. Big announcement about the holiday season. And until then, thank you, fuck you, and bye-bye, everybody.